Marvel. I can control metal. Chapter 1. Tonight's New York seems to be particularly noisy. The Harlem neighborhood of Manhattan started from Broadway on 121st Street with huge noises and explosions. The crowd was surging, sprinting continuously, crying and screaming filled the whole street. The fire was everywhere, and from time to time a car flew out, smashing the tall building beside it. Everyone was rushing to flee outside. Only a small figure walked from the side street towards the center of the explosion. This time it's a bit dangerous. I think about it, it's only 2007 now. What's the situation this time? A young Asian boy with dark hair and dark eyes took out a metal mask and put it on his face. It doesn't matter, please solve it quickly. How about going back to practice? After not taking a few steps, a broken human body fell from the sky and smashed in front of Lu Chong. The colorful internal organs were mixed with bright red blood, and Lu Chong's upper was soaked in an instant, and a lot of flesh and blood debris was splashed on his clothes. The extremely stimulating scene made Lu Chong a fiercely excited look, his eyes full of confidence also trance. Looking at this, there is no human-shaped flesh and blood debris. Wow! He vomited with one hand on the wall of the shop nearby. I retched a few times, but I couldn't vomit anything, because Lu Chong's stomach had never stored food before. Any food that entered Lu Chong's stomach would quickly disappear and all the energy would be poured in. In his mind. Took off his jacket, and covered the person on the ground with his hands trembling, his steps abruptly accelerated, and he rushed over. Walked through the last street, and just appeared. A car door was like a fast-flying spinning card, slashed towards Lu, and in the next second, he would be cut in half. Immediately, Lu Chong's fingers moved slightly, and the fast-rotating door of the flying car was set in front of Lu Chong for a split second. The distance between them was only 50 centimeters. They stopped so suddenly and floated in the air without moving. There are still a few blood stains on the edge. I don't know how many people were cut off before the car door that was originally like a saw blade came to Lu Chong. Lu Chong was also shocked by the huge figure in the distance and didn't dare to move. Hate. He has a huge height of 4 meters, and his muscles and bones are tightly intertwined. There is a row of sharp bone spurs protruding from the spine. There are also elbows, shoulders and elbows, all of which are pierced. Root spurs come. The strong muscles are visible, and the sudden change in the body seems to have made dozens of more bones in the hatred, giving strong protection. He is naked, and a shit yellow bald giant is there to pull over a car. Threw it at the crowd, causing a huge explosion. There were 2 military trucks around. An RPG shot at Abomination from the vehicle. The rocket with a speed of 30 meters per second was grabbed by Abomination and let it explode. There was a violent sound with fire overflowing. In a blink of an eye, the hatred came out of the flame without any scars. At the same time, he was finally attracted by the truck. Grinned ferociously, then he directly blasted a car and walked quickly towards Lu Chong. On the chaotic street, no one noticed the child with a car door floating in front of him. Lu Chong watched the tyrannical figure rushing over, and could not help but stepped back 2 steps. The hanging car door fell down. Gatling on the truck never stopped firing, and the car immediately turned around and fled back madly, while Lu Chong on the side quietly ducked away. Disgusting strode huge steps, everything that blocked him on the road was thrown away, and within 200 meters, he caught up with the truck he wanted to escape, hitting the car in 2 with just 1 punch, holding one high. The car shouted violently at the camera of the military truck, "Come on." Boom. When the car crashed down, the 3 people in the car immediately became a pool of meatloaf. Abby just wanted to leave, but the wreckage of the 2 cars in front of him suddenly climbed onto Abby's body and locked them together. Suddenly, Abby couldn't move. At the corner 100 meters away, Lu Chong sat on the suspended car door with his hands folded, facing the direction of disgust. The veins of his right hand burst and pressed down severely. The steel wreck tied his abominable legs together, and a part of the car wreck continued to climb up the rock. In less than a second, the steel covered his head. At the same time, a military helicopter also rushed over from a distance. While disgust was screaming and tearing off the metal on his face, Lu Chong's pink face also had some hideousness. I didn't expect that this time it turned out to be the battle against the Hulk. I thought it would be 5 years before I would be exposed to the official plot of the reunion. This is really an accident. The car door under Lu Chong fell directly to the ground, standing upright on the ground, and stepping forward a few steps. The blue veins on his forehead also rose a little, but the thin figure had great strength, and his hands opened. It is struggling again. The other 3 cars around Disgust also floated out of thin air, hitting Disgust with a great impact, directly knocking Disgust on the ground. At the same time, a huge billboard was smashed down from a high altitude, and together with 3 cars, it fell on the body of Abomination. In an instant, showed great deformation and distortion, as if an unparalleled force was pressed down. The ground was cracked with countless small cracks, and the steel bracket was deeply inserted into the ground. Lu Chong's eyes were bleeding a lot, and he yelled softly, gritted his teeth. Why is it today? Give me 3 more days, and I will be able to break through 50 points in my control, and my ability should be improved a lot by then. After being suppressed for less than a minute, a huge fist rushed out of the metal pile, knocking out a lot of metal fragments, but it flew out less than 20 centimeters and reattached to the fist, squeezing downwards pressed. But it was useless. Another fist rushed out, and the huge movement completely shattered the unbroken glass on the street just now. Hideous fists directly tore the upper body apart, and a big bald head rushed out of it, ignoring the fine metal wrapped around it, looking around, and shouting, "Who is it? Come out for a fight." The surrounding metal rushed up again, and was thrown out with a fist of hatred. With a few hard kicks, the surrounding metal block was kicked out, and the building penetrated several holes. It's useless to play these little tricks on the sidelines. Cede it. Roared aloud. Lu Chong put down his hands and looked at the tall figure in the distance. He flipped his hands and took out 2 sharp silver flying knives. Ordinary metal can't break the defense of Abomination. It's hard to get past the military. The few titanium alloy steel alloys here are really unwilling to use. The feces' yellow hatred in the distance began to destroy the buildings everywhere again, demonstrating his incomparable power. At the same time, a small figure appeared on the helicopter above. Lu Chong stared at the figure closely, and the 1 minute he had just suppressed was enough to make most people leave the neighborhood. Sure enough, there was no fear of the crowd around and the flustered running away, which made the Disgust very unhappy. He stamped a big hole in the ground with 1 foot, kicked the 2 cars around him, and prepared to run to the distant crowd. There was a whistling sound in the sky, 1 person fell from the sky, and a word floated in the sky. "Oh shit." Single quote. Smashed the ground out of a big hole that did not fit his body shape at all. Lu Chong narrowed his eyes and raised his right hand while disgusting and stupefied. With a light movement of the silver flying knife in his hand, it disappeared instantly, and an inexplicable powerful wave appeared in front of him, pushing Lu Chong back 2 times. Step. 100 meters away, a flying knife suddenly appeared on Abomination's face, with a piercing sound that hadn't arrived, and plunged straight into Abomination's eyes, and muddy blood splashed out. A huge violent roar, enough to make the entire neighborhood hear the pain. 2 fists of horror slammed on the ground, and countless small stones splashed out, making Lin Fan in the distance a little unclear. Lu Chong waved his hand gently, and the car door on the side came to his feet again, stepped on it, and rushed to the hatred of the violent chaos in the same place, with a smile in his eyes. It seems that good metal can only be strong enough to break the defense. At the corner of 50 meters, the smoke and dust fell, and the loathing movement calmed down a bit, only to discover that the handle of that small silver flying knife was firmly clamped by the hatred eyelids. Lived, mixed with blood and flesh and blood, he pulled it out together. At the same time, one of the eye sockets has been torn into such a hatred. The eyes are slowly recovering, it seems, but a few minutes, it may be recovered. So, Lu Chong also stopped. No, now I can't stop the hatred at all. Even Hulk has already come, I'll leave first. Lu Chong, a small man with a slender body, hides aside, looking at the trembling giant pit. A huge green fist rises into the sky. Hulk, I am finally going to see the real you. The huge Hulk crawled out of the pit. His size was not inferior and hateful. Although the muscles were not as hideous as hatred, they were full of beauty of strength. Roar. A huge shock wave of roar cleared out the debris in front of him. Instantly attracted the object of hatred. Abomination. Prototype. Emil Bronsky, originally born because of Hulk, he was born to defeat Hulk, so he turned and looked at the Hulk 30 meters away. Hulk. Abomination raised his head with a loud roar, and rushed over. The two giants stepped on the ground with countless cracks and ran in large strides. 10 meters away, they jumped up, and the two muscular giants slammed together in the sky above the street. The collision of strength and beauty deeply stimulated Lu Chong. Lu Chong's heart jumped out with excitement. 5 years, I finally saw this scene, it's too classic. With the violent muscle crash, Hulk unexpectedly flew out of hatred. He rolled over a dozen meters away and staggered to his feet, but one of them couldn't stand firmly and thumped for a while, his body tilted and he was dizzy. Fell down again. Disgust came out of the fire and crushed a burning car under his feet. At this moment, his right eye has almost been repaired, come on. Seeing this, Lu Chong slapped his head fiercely, I almost forgot. The current Hulk was forced out by Dr. Banner. In fact, most of the power was suppressed by the inhibitory medicine. I have to help him. Just wanted to step forward, but saw Hulk's quick punches knocking the hatred to the ground, and directly crushed the whole body of hatred to the ground, as if everything around him was as fragile as tofu. Hate being beaten by Hulk with a heavy blow, but he spit out a few broken teeth in disdain, are you capable of this? Kicked Huok out, and flew straight to Lu Chong, and he was about to press on Lu Chong's body. The door behind him naturally rushed forward to withstand Hulk's body. Seeing this, Lu Chong took a few steps back and wanted to leave, I'm just a crispy ADC now. Single quote. Disgust also caught up, and the two muscular giants just so coincidentally and cleverly hammered each other around Lu Chong. The special metal pillars that he had been carrying with him all the time were immediately attached to a few key points of his body. Before he evacuated quickly, he saw a Huang Chungchung's giant punch hammer coming. Lu Chong only had time to fight with his hands. Although his body had madly retreated backwards, the unparalleled impact force still made Lu Chong fly more than 10 meters away. Click, click, click. With a few crisp sounds, the bones of both arms were broken into several sections, and the severe pain hit Lu Chong's brain, almost making him faint. The metal piece behind him made a great cushion, supporting Lu Chong to 50 meters away, or even farther away, with his hands drooping weakly, and every time he shook his face, the pain of bone stubble piercing was heard. Lu Chong's face, the upper part was pale, cold sweat covered his forehead. Really, an unstoppable force. Looking at the two scuffled together, hatred once again pressed Hulk to the ground, beating wildly. Lu Chong forcibly calmed down, looking at the silhouettes of these two avenues, hurry up, think about it, yes, weapons. Single quote. The two metal strips and some metal wires that carried with him had already fixed his hands and looked around in a hurry. But in just a few seconds, the two giants have already crossed several buildings and don't know where they are going. Lu Chong soared into the sky and flew to a building. From a distance, he saw an armed helicopter shooting frantically at Abomination, but even the heavy machine guns on the plane did not cause much damage to Abomination. On the contrary, he was even more irritated. Up him. One jumped up and grabbed the helicopter. Hulk grabbed the abominable calf in time. As a result, the two big men were hanging on the helicopter and fighting, and the aircraft was forced to land on the ground, and the wings fell. Scattered, the fuselage also cracked a few holes. Lu Chong rushed over, the weak Hulk was thrown aside, and the hatred was stepping on the helicopter, looking at Hulk from a high level, but the helicopter's oil drum had broken open and it was flowing continuously. Disgusted Hulk directly and slammed Hulk on the wall. No matter how much Hulk struggled, it was useless. Beta looked at Hulk helplessly in the broken cabin of the helicopter, with despair in his eyes. You don't deserve to have this kind of power, just watch her die. Emil Bronsky, who has been pursuing power all his life, became Abomination. He looked down on Hulk, who was bound by ordinary people, and his mouth was dirty. His saliva flew wildly, and his eyes were full of cruelty. Hated the bone spurs on his elbows, blood had penetrated into Hulk's chest muscles. And an electric spark produced by an electrical short circuit ignited the kerosene outside the aircraft, and the flames raged, instantly covering the entire helicopter. Lu Chong forced both palms to hold, his left hand controlled the helicopter's metal shell to close and open as much as possible, and his right hand controlled the flying knife to stab at the back of the Abomination head. I saw the hatred head rushed forward, and a silver steel knife was deeply inserted in the back of his head. At the same time, Hulk, who was already angry to the extreme, turned green again. Minute. Hulk's muscles swelled again, and the skyrocketing power made his left hand break his abhorrent hands directly, lifted the spine on his back, and slammed it against the wall of the factory, knocking down several walls, and disappeared. A trace. 2 steps forward, the fan-sized palms slapped hard and let out a rough roar, Hulkpalm. A huge air current shock wave rushed towards the helicopter, and instantly the 12th level wind blew away the oil stains, and flew to the rear with countless dust, blowing off the flames on the fuselage, and the beta in the helicopter was also climbed out from the gap at the other end. Be careful. Disgust is at the rear, holding a huge iron chain with a stone pier in his hand. It was originally used by the factory to anchor large ships, but at the moment he was used as a weapon by Disgust. There are 2 large stone counterweights at the chain end, which add up to a total of thousands of kilograms. If this kind of thing is shaken, even a tank can be smashed. Slammed Hulk with his back facing him. Lu Chong, who was dazzled by the dust, saw the scene in time. No. A certain point in my mind exploded, and the iron chain with great strength became slower and slower in the air, hanging over Hulk's head. Hulk smash. Hulk smash hit the ground with both fists. The huge crack spread to the Hatred. Hatred stepped into the crack, his hand loosened, and the iron chain fell directly into Hulk's hand. Seeing this scene, Lu Chong, who was covered in dust, finally laughed. Lu Chong, who was exhausted his last strength to stay away from the coming army as much as possible. After crossing 2 blocks, he fell to the ground without awake. When Lu Chong woke up again, he was already in a Manhattan hospital. His hands were fixed by splints, and there were many wailing wounded on the surrounding hospital beds. Looking at it, Lu Chong was either missing an arm or a broken leg. The situation is very lucky. A nurse lady walked in with a report. Her short blonde hair was very clean and neat, her nose had little freckles on both sides of her nose, and her plump body with a protruding and curving front made the voice of the wailing wounded a little weaker. Looking at Lu Chong, who was already sober, the nurse sister grinned. Little guy, you are really lucky. You appeared near the craziest streets of those 2 monsters, and you only suffered so little injury. After looking at the report in his hand, he lowered his head and touched Lu Chong's little head. By the way, the police were supposed to go to your parents, but they didn't seem to find them. It seems that you can contact them and ask them to come and pick you up. By the way, pay the medical bills. Miss Nurse, when is it now? Lu Chong glanced at the window, it was still pitch black. At 4:15 in the morning, I only sent you last night. You were in a coma for 6 hours. Penny looked at her watch and leaned down and said cordially to Lu Chong, but your medical expenses there are $237. You can go to the nurse's desk and make a call. My sister has something to do. Bye. Well, Nurse Penny, bye. Lu Chong glanced at the name tag on Penny's chest and responded. The departure of the nurse attracted the attention of most people, but Lu Chong was not included. Who was no more than 1.2 meters tall, jumped out of the hospital bed and came to the window. It was clear that there were many ambulances transporting the wounded in front of the hospital. Took out his pocket, there was almost $300 in it, and he came to the office where he paid the fee by himself. After paying the fee, he hurriedly left the hospital. Before leaving, I heard the head nurse call at the front desk. Yes, the bed is full, please send to another hospital if you have serious illnesses, don't send it to the nearest hospital. Don't you know? Those 2 monsters destroyed several buildings. There are already more than 100 serious patients in our hospital alone. According to the police, more than 80 people and more than 100 vehicles died yesterday. Thousands of people have been injured, what can we do about this? Went out and stopped a taxi, Queens, Forest Mountain Road. Hey, kid, isn't that close, do you have money? The black man who drove looked down on him. You are indispensable. Lu Chong turned his head and looked at the scenery outside the window, and said grimly. The car started moving gradually. It didn't take long before I saw it. At the place where the accident happened last night, several police cars with their horns and flashing lights were parked, pulling the yellow cordon, and no one was allowed to approach. Lu rushed to see this, he also let out a sigh of relief, leaning on the car seat. 5 years, it seems that the plot is about to begin, but why is this body only 10 years old? Many things are very inconvenient. Single quote. 5 years ago, Lu Chong, who was watching Spider-Man, Heroes Expedition, in the movie theater, had just seen the end of the film and was enthusiastically waiting for the end of the Easter eggs. As a result, the eggs did not arrive, but a bullet came. At that time, a man rushed in angrily from outside the theater, holding a handmade clay gun in his hand, and shooting at a pair of men and women sitting next to him, still muttering desperately, "You still dare find a man outside? I killed you." Unbiased, all the bullets happened to crash on Lu Chong's head. The last thought of Lu Chong, who was bleeding and lying on the ground, was, "So what's the last egg? There is another, if the bullet can turn." Single quote. As a result, in a daze, he came to the streets of New York and became a 5-year-old child who has been living in the home of his adoptive parents. But, Lu Chong looked at the screen in his mind. Control point, 49. Strength 7, Defense 5, Speed 8, Spirit 17. Note, a healthy adult male has a value of 10. Skill, D-Class Metal Control. The 3-line light and quiet words completely changed Lu Chong's life. Relearning English, accepting a new family, accepting the fact that his body has become smaller, and slowly accepting the fact that he can control metal. 20 minutes later, the taxi stopped on Forest Road. "Hey, boy, $29, pay." Lu Chong took out $30 from his pocket again and handed it over. The black driver snatched it over and said, "Wow. The remaining $1 will be used as a tip. Here is a piece of advice, sir, don't hang around outside at night." He drove away in the car. Looking at his back, he resisted the urge to unload 2 bolts from his wheels, walked towards the door of his house, looked at the splint in his hand, moved his finger slightly, and the last knife in his trousers flew away. He came out, cut the bandage, and threw it in the trash can on the side of the road. Only the last flying knife is left. This time I lost it too much. Not only did I gain nothing, but also got all the belongings. What a pity. Lu Chong stuffed the knife back into the knife bag and silently went up. Lu hid in his room. First of all, a large box full of high-calorie snacks, chocolates, compressed burgers, canned beef, etc. floated down from the cabinet and stuffed my mouth. At the same time, a solid iron rod weighing nearly 6 centimeters in thickness was pulled out from the iron rack on the side, and placed on the knees until the last bit of beef in the mouth was swallowed, and his hands were gently placed on the iron rod. The broken arms that have given up on the splint have been slightly bent. The huge pain caused by these actions has made the arms tremble all the time, and the palms can't even be closed, relying on some metal pieces around them to assist. I saw that Lu Chong's hands placed the iron rods, sinking a little bit, and although he couldn't see it, he felt that the broken part on his arm was wrapped in an inexplicable energy, is slowly correcting the broken bone. This is an ability that Lu Chong discovered when he was 8 years old. Because he flew too high, he fell from the air and his legs broke apart. On that night, Lu Chong, who was barely sensible, relied on his instinct. He pulled a heavy iron frame over and put his hand on it. That night, Lu Chong lay in the yard and swallowed half of a large iron frame before healed his legs. The severe pain made him unable to sleep all night, and he also caught a cold. Since then, he has not dared to do this. Waves. The sky outside the window has turned pale. I glanced at the wall clock. It was already more than 5 o'clock. The iron rod in my hand had disappeared halfway. Yes, it disappeared, completely disappeared, without a little residue, disappeared out of thin air. This kind of treatment Lu Chong thought about the way for a long time. Is it absorbed? Not really. Is more like exchanging the disappeared metal for healing energy. As for how to do it, Lu Chong still didn't understand. There has been a movement outside the door. It seems that the uncle and aunt have got up. Lu Chong is not hesitating. The 5 hearts are up to the sky, and the whole body emits a slight golden light, and the iron rod in his hand trembles uncontrollably. Then, the small golden light spot visible to the naked eye emerges from the iron rod and melts into the larger one. Luminous body, in Lu Chong's body. After less than 10 minutes of effort, Lu Chong slowly opened his eyes, the whole room was dim again, and he threw the iron rod that had not changed much into the big iron box behind him. Click. With a soft sound, the metal rod that fell naturally fell into 2 pieces, like a piece of fragile glass. Stood up and glanced at his undamaged hands. I feel that I'm stronger. Single quote. Control point. 50. Strength. 7 defense, 6 speed, 8 spirit, 17. Note, a healthy adult male has a value of 10. Skill. D-level metal control, E-level physical enhancement. Strengthening. GoldenEye 8%. The layout in Liu Chong's mind has a few more interfaces, and a full body projection of himself appeared in his mind. Among them, there is a different kind of golden light on the eyes. Squeezed his right hand out of thin air, and a brand new big iron rod flew over from the iron frame on the side. Golden eyes. Let me see what it is. Leo. Come down to eat, and I'll take you to school soon. Aunt Jenny shouted downstairs. Get down now. Liu Chong's eyes widened. The iron rod in his hand was broken into 2 pieces, and his hands were gently wiped upwards. The 2 iron blocks turned into 2 circular weights, which were fixed on the calf. I took a new coat, put on my school bag, and hurried downstairs. Aunt Jenny is still busy in the kitchen, and Uncle George is already sitting at the dining table and flipping through today's newspaper. Jenny, Leo, the newspaper said that 2 monsters attacked Manhattan last night and killed hundreds of people. It's terrible, and it's really unsafe outside now. Uncle George put down the newspaper in his hand and touched Liu Chong. Leo, you can't go out alone at night. If you have something, you must tell us and I will accompany you out. George, Leo has been very independent since he was a child. I don't worry about him. Leo is so good that he won't run around. Jenny came out with fried eggs, ham and bread hot dogs, 3 large plates full, even 5 people can't finish it. Liu Chong patted his stomach, and said obediently, don't worry, I won't go out casually. I recently picked up several model orders for hundreds of yuan. Uncle and Aunt, I'm hungry, I will eat first up. Said, he picked up 2 slices of bread and ate it with ham and fried eggs, as if the previous snacks did not exist, like a hungry young man. George looked at Liu Chong who was eating food. Leo, it's good to have a hobby, but it can't be too hard. You're only 10 years old now. Although we can't make much money, there's no problem raising you this little guy. Although Leo eats a lot, Leo earns no less than us, isn't it, Leo? Jenny also sat down and touched Liu Chong's head with a smile, and preached excitedly. George and Jenny are an ordinary couple, a company employee, an electrical engineer, who fall in love and get married. The 2 have been married for 10 years, but they have never had any children. The results of the examination revealed that both of them had fertility problems, and they still persisted. Discussing about adopting a child, on the way to the adoption home, I ran into a 5-year-old Liu Chong who had passed out of hunger. He thought this was a child given to them by God, so he took him home. Until now, he is still a son. Treat Liu Chong the same. I still wanted to be called Liu, but when I screamed it became Leo. Leo continued to eat the bread. Even if he had eaten 2, his stomach was still empty. All the food that entered the stomach, except for the part used to maintain physical movement, all the energy rushed into his brain. Turns into a burst of energy, and the combination of this energy with metal can slowly improve one's control. This is also a training method that he has figured out. Therefore, Liu Chong's calf is still slowly absorbing the metal energy. A warm energy slowly soaked in the eyes, and the progress of the golden eye changed from 8% to 9% in such a short period of time. Leo, incarnate as a big stomach king, ate up the rest of the food, picked up a small school bag, and Uncle George took him to school. George drove down 2 streets, and Jenny saw a young beauty on the side of the road and walked towards the elementary school with a little doll. Hey, that's my colleague, May. Drove over happily. Hey, May, where are you going? What's the matter with this baby, May, are you? Hey, Jenny. This is my sister's son, who lives in my house now. His name is Peter. Peter said to Aunt Jenny, hello. May hugged Peter and said to Jenny. Oh, baby, you are so cute, what is your name? Peter, Peter Parker. The little boy shrank his neck and whispered. Jenny opened the car door. May, come up. Let's go together. Leo also belongs to that school. Leo can play with Peter in the future. Liu Chong looked at the 6-year-old, first-grade child beside him, and slapped his head hard. Oh my God, Aunt May, Peter Parker. I met Spider-Man as a kid. Single quote. Looking at little Peter who was a little scared, Liu Chong grinned and stretched out his hand. Hello, my name is Leo, I am 10 years old this year and I am in the 4th grade. From now on, you will call me Brother Leo. I can take you. Go to school. Peter turned his head to look at Lu Chong, and the two little guys have become so wonderfully married. In the evening, Lu Chong lay down on the bed happily. Today, his mind is full of Spider-Man's shadow, Peter Parker. It's really Spider-Man, so lucky. Boom boom, two pieces of metal came out from under the trouser legs, and consciously flew into the scrap metal box, inexplicably broken into several pieces. Lu Chong waved his hand, and a small piece of silver steel flew out from the iron shelf in the room. In his hand, this piece of steel with a Brinell hardness of 500 was almost like a piece of plasticine. After a while, he kneaded it into a humanoid mold, and then sculpted it carefully, but within a few minutes, a metal villain model of Spider-Man was completed. Is very exquisite and beautiful, with a smooth and comfortable touch, as if it were cast, but it will be more vivid and beautiful. If it is sold, it will cost at least $100. I opened my bookcase, and it was filled with all kinds of metal villains, many of which were items to be sent, and some were purely memorial works, such as this Spider-Man and Mark I metal model. Closed the cabinet door and tried to calm herself down. At this moment, Jin Jing has reached 49% of the progress after a day of hard work, but the two pieces of iron on her feet have been absorbed. Pulled out a piece of iron again, pressed his hands on it, and countless golden lights came out and slowly merged into Lu Chong's body, and it rushed to his eyes again. From the depths of the black pupil, a small golden light spot appeared, and it slowly bloomed until it filled the entire eyeball, opened the eyes, and actually shot out 2 feet of light out of thin air, and then slowly dissipated. Come. Control point. 50. Strength 7 Defense 6 Speed 8 Spirit 17 inches. Skill. D-level metal control and D-level physical enhancement. Strengthening. Goldite 50%, copper skin 3%, steel bar 0%, iron bone 0%. At the same time, Lu Chong's eyes changed slightly. When he returned to the room, he did not turn on the light. Now the sky is slowly getting dark. The room is already very dark, but for Lu Chong, it is clearly visible, even more clearly than during the day. Looking out, it is like the daytime scene, and the night has no effect on Lu Chong anymore. But not only that, Lu Chong stared slightly, a little golden light appeared in his eyes, and the surrounding walls seemed to disappear out of thin air, and he could directly see the people in the house. Uncle Kai next door is cooking. I always thought Aunt Jing was cooking. Single quote. Hey, isn't that Xiao Rui in the same class as me? Why are you rolling on the floor? Single quote. Oh, is Aunt Ida hiding her private money? Single quote. Sister Davy did her homework as soon as she got home. Single quote. Ah, Aunt Donna doesn't seem to be sleeping next to Uncle Fitz, terrible. Single quote. Lu Chong looked around at the neighbors around him. Golden eyes not only brought night vision, but also enhanced the field of vision. Even a room 100 meters away could see clearly. Was taken aback suddenly, that is, someone is robbing with a gun. Just in a street alley 200 meters away, Lu Chong clearly looked through the 3 houses and saw the black brawny pushing a young girl deep into the alley. Glanced at his watch, there are still 15 minutes for dinner, no problem. He jumped down from the 2nd floor, and the 2 steel plates on the soles of his feet made him fall into the yard lightly. Rushed to the destination in large strides. When encountering obstacles, it was like a spring under his feet, and he jumped very steadily. This is the flying ability that Lu Chong has been familiar with after 3 years of training. Is like stepping on those Volto float boots on the Karma Taj Mahal. Although he can't fly very fast, he can surpass obstacles at will. The speed is not slow, but at a distance of a few hundred meters, in less than a minute, Lu Chong is already standing at the entrance of the alley. The golden eye is also always on, watching that the black man has successfully grabbed her handbag, but he seems a little dissatisfied, rubbing his black hands, looking at the girl happily. Lu Chong patted his head and knew that it was not that simple. Just brought out a metal baseball bat from home. It was Uncle George's, so I brought it out. Just carried the baseball bat and walked in generously, but in fact, every step he stepped on was 1 centimeter above the ground in the air, so there was no sound under his feet, like a ghost. The sky under the setting sun was dark, and the alley was extremely dark. The woman could see the movement of the alley, but the robber could not see. He only had the delicate little sister in front of her, like a hungry wolf staring at a piece of plump meat, holding a pistol, and gestured in front of her. If you don't want to die, just be obedient. I just came out of prison, you don't want me to go in. Drooling, he tore the girl's skirt directly, and touched it. The woman thought she was going to explain here today, she bit her lip, she didn't know if she was going to resist or obey, but now she saw a figure at the alley, and there was a glimmer of hope in her heart, but she saw it was just one. When I was a child, hope became despair again. Kept winking, go quickly, go to the police, and call other adults to come and help. Lu Chong put a finger in front of his lips. This silent posture seemed to be universal. Signaled the woman not to say anything, and walked behind the black man within a few steps. The woman widened her eyes and looked at Lu Chong in horror, with a somewhat unbelievable appearance. The little boy was so bold. The robber seemed to have noticed something wrong, and turned around and looked back. Go. Single quote. Oncoming is a big iron rod, which directly hit his shiny forehead. There was a crisp sound of boom, and the robber did not have time to say a word, and lay down neatly, with the gun in his hand also falling aside. At this time, the older sister dared to stand up and tugged at the skirt, but it was a huge opening, unable to cover the base of the thigh, and looked embarrassed. Lu Chong also saw his sister's face clearly, Aunt May. Single quote. Aunt May, who was flustered, also relaxed. Leo. Why are you? No, you, Aunt May, why are you blocked? Lu Chong was also a little flustered, originally thinking that he was someone he did not know. Leo, I wanted to find Sister Jenny, but on the way here, I was stared at by him. It's really disgusting. After that, May kicked the black man fiercely. The black man moved a few times, as if there was a sign of being sober. Lu Chong knocked down with a stick again, boom, knocking it out completely. Aunt May, let's go, it's not safe here, it's better not to go out at night. Okay, I think I'm going to change a suit quickly. Aunt May also pulled her skirt, picked up her bag from the ground, and followed Lu Chong to leave this place of right and wrong. Lu Chong, who took the lead in the front, moved his fingers slightly, and the pistol lying quietly on the ground broke into several pieces, and the bullets turned into copper beads. As for this black man, since then, there has been a foolish tramp with a big drum on his head in Queens. On the way, Aunt May asked, Leo, why did you appear in that remote alley? Aunt May, I just go around, yes, just around, yes, Aunt Jenny has been talking about you at night, I didn't expect your house to live in that building. We are very close. Lu Chong hurriedly changed the subject. Oh, it's hard to say a word, Peter's parents, let's talk later. Aunt May seems to be worried about this too. When came home, Aunt Jenny didn't expect Aunt May to come. She was very surprised and invited May to dinner. At the dinner table, May said something that shocked everyone. Peter's parents are both from the CIA, so they often leave Peter at my house, but the CIA sent news a few days ago that they all sacrificed during a mission. May's eyes were red. Stand up. So, Jenny, I don't know what to do. Both my parents died young, and now even my dearest brother is gone. May Parker said the news very sadly and hugged Jenny. Crying, very sad. George and Leo were also a little at a loss. May, who had lost everything, really had no place to vent, and it was impossible to tell the 6-year-old Peter this cruel fact. Now only 26-year-old Aunt May had to tell this. Jenny, who has always been the big sister in the company, came crying. Leo also became silent for a while, ate a few bites of food, returned to his room, and lay down. The movies I have seen before are only a small part of the whole world. But when I really came here, I faced a real person and I came into contact with more. No more. Peter here is not the one in the Spider-Man trilogy played by Tobey Maguire, nor is he the extraordinary Spider-Man of Andrew Garfield. Is Peter Parker who does not have Uncle Ben in the sentence of, the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. But in less than Captain America 3 greater than, he said to Tony Stark who met for the first time, if I have power and I don't do anything, then anything bad happens is my responsibility. Single quote. This sentence not only said in the heart of Iron Man, but also deeply penetrated into Lu Chong's heart. This is one of the reasons why Lu Chong will go everywhere to troublesome places after he has power. Tony is the same as Peter. Unlike other superheroes, Spider-Man and Iron Man could have chosen to be ordinary people. Before Iron Man became Iron Man, he never thought about saving the world, just like Tony Stark is just a pure arms dealer. And Peter can also choose to hide his power to be an ordinary person, or even use his superpowers to do it. Anyone can get something for nothing. But they didn't choose to be an ordinary person. No matter whether the acquisition of superpowers was accidental or inevitable, they did not hide, did not use them to do their own profit, but chose to do what a hero should do. Thinking of the good boy in the future who will face Thanos at the age of 15, he was once one of his favorite superheroes. Lu Chang also smiled faintly on his face. Peter, I will help you grow up. From now on, I will not let you face the enemy alone. Single quote. Snapped. With a light snap of his fingers, the lights in the room turned on, and Lu Chang sat at the computer desk, watching the messages in the two-dimensional model group. Leo, I have a friend who wants a Gundam model, is there a way? Single quote. K, you don't believe Leo too much. You don't have to make one or two models anymore. Just say no. Single quote. Yeah, Leo's technique is the best I've ever seen. K, it's not the first time for you, why would you ask such a stupid question? Single quote. Oh, wait for me to finish, this time I want a big guy. Single quote. This friend has suddenly become obsessed with Mobile Suit Gundam recently, and he is also rich, and he wants a big all-metal model, saying that he will put it in his private collection villa. Single quote. Hey, K, you still know such a rich man. Single quote. K, let's be friends. Single quote. Watched the topic in the group gradually become crooked. At Kai how big he wants. Lu Chang also responded directly in the group. Leo is out. Single quote. Leo is big, do you accept apprentices? Single quote. Leo, there is an offline meeting on the weekend, come out to play, I will reimburse all the expenses. Single quote. Leo, you. Lu Changyi went online and exploded a lot of people, and all at once attracted everyone's attention. There were only about 20 people in this group, and they were basically second-hand dealers in the modeling industry. Fans of money metal models, but they are basically seldom bubbling. Everyone be quiet, how about I just pull in that friend? At Leo. It's okay, it looks like it's really a big order, you don't dare to quote anymore, hee hee. At Kai. Lu Chang smiled and replied. Not long after, a person named Harry entered the group chat. Welcome. Single quote. Welcome to join in. Single quote. Hello, boss. Single quote. The people in the group are a group of human spirits, relying on these rich people, of course, they are crazy to show their favor when they appear. In any case, it is good to be familiar, in case you have a chance to meet in the future. Kai doesn't make jokes casually. Regarding money, everyone is well aware of it. Everyone is playing on this issue unless he doesn't want to get confused. I heard from Kai that there is a master here who is very good at making models, really. Single quote. Of course, Leo is very powerful. He has produced more than 100 different metal models, each of which is a classic. The price in the circle has doubled several times, at Harry. Leo is the person who has seen the best model making, and the price is very fair. Fortunately, the output is not a lot, otherwise the other model makers will have nothing to eat, at Harry. At Harry, this group is basically the gathering place of all the model elites in New York, you can always find us if you need it, as long as you have money, you are not limited to models. Single quote. Lu Chang looked at the news in the lively group, smiled and shook his head, at Harry, what kind of model do you want? But let me say first, the all-metal model over 1 meter high is already very big. I want a truck to pull. Really, I want someone taller than me. Harry replied in the group. The full metal of one person's height can weigh 1,000 catties, so you should think carefully, or make the inside wood and the outside gilded. Someone persuaded it. No, I want all metal, I want one that is 1 meter tall. At Leo. All metal. 1.3 meters, the price is not cheap, how old are you? Harry, only Lu Chang dared to ask that. How much is it? I am 8 years old already. Single quote. Lu Chang became speechless in an instant. The 8-year-old kid wanted a 1 meter high all-metal model. Is that kidding? At Kai. Single quote. Leo, he paid for it. K quickly replied. How much is it? At Leo. Probably $50,000. At Harry, Lu Chong thought for a while, including the 5,000 commission to Kai, and gave a reasonable price based on the market. Oh, I thought it would cost more than 100,000, but I almost thought my pocket money was not enough. 50,000 is not expensive. When can it be done? Harry said lightly. A series of exclamation marks popped up. Is this the world of the rich? Is $50,000 just pocket money for an 8-year-old? Lu Chong was also taken aback, but still calmly said, okay, first give Kai half of the deposit, and then send me the model style you want, I'll go and make some preparations. After finishing speaking, he pushed the computer aside, glanced at the few iron rods left on the shelf in the room, turned and walked towards the garage. There is his studio, which was specially organized for Lu Chong by Jenny and George. Aunt May has been sent back by Aunt Jenny, just 2 blocks away, only 10 minutes away. Lu Chong entered the garage alone, closed the door, and it became a closed space, which is also Lu Chong's favorite state. Everything here is done by himself. The bright light bulbs are surrounded by countless metals. Accessories gave him a great sense of security. Sat on his work chair, and casually attracted a few silver metal blocks and flew onto the workbench. The last time I fought in Manhattan, I forgot to take all the knives back and I had to make them again. Single quote. Lu Chong's hands were like squeezing rubber. Soon, 3 bright flying knives appeared in front of him, and they picked them up and gestured. Sighed, ordinary metal still doesn't work. It's okay to deal with ordinary people, but it's okay to deal with hatred of these characters, but you can't even break the defense, but you can't get high-end metal. Or, go to the military to see it. Single quote. Throw it casually, and the 3 throwing knives automatically flew back into the knife bag on the calf. Metal wire, metal rod, and joint protector, Lu Chong pointed out one by one. The metal in front of him changed so quickly. In such a minute, a small piece of metal turned into a roll of metal filaments with a diameter of less than 1 millimeter, and flew into Lu Chong's waist pocket. One piece of metal turned into 2 metal rods that were no more than 1 centimeter thick, and they were put aside with several auxiliary devices on the same side. Lu Chong was still complaining, I really want to know the taste of Edmund alloy, as well as Zhenjin, I must go to Wakanda if I have a chance, it must be great. Drooling again. In fact, Lu Chong also understands that his current self, with control of 50 points, has absolute control over most metals. But for those more advanced metals, they are now placed in front of him, and they may not be able to completely control and deform them. As he said, Lu Chong's eyes lit up and he came to his small warehouse, and pulled out a small box from the bottom. Inside, there was a metal block no more than 5 centimeters in diameter, but it was shining. Gold titanium alloy. The last time an ordinary vehicle passed by Lu Chong, he immediately felt that there were more than 100 pieces of such high-quality metal in it. Lu Chong, who was drooling, secretly followed all the way, and finally let out when he got off the car for transportation. 3 pieces of gold titanium alloy come out. The 2 throwing knives that have been transformed into have been dedicated to hatred, is gone, but this time, it is not going to make this piece of metal a tool. Or, try new abilities. My defense is too weak. If I don't take care of it someday, an ice bullet may solve me. Lu Chong looked at the shiny metal in his hand, his eyes gleaming. The gold titanium alloy was brought together with both hands, and he immediately began to absorb it, and a wonderful energy flowed out of his mind, gathering the golden light emitted by the gold titanium alloy. A wonderful light film was attached to Lu Chong's skin and slowly penetrated into it. Strengthening. Goldite 54%, copper skin 4%, steel bar 0%, iron bone 0%. The copper skin item began to slowly increase, 5%, 6%, 7%, and rose to 8%. The golden light on the whole body gradually converged, and the shiny metal block in his hand also became dull, and its size was reduced by a point. When it was thrown into the waste bin, it was directly broken into 7 or 8 pieces. The look of metal squeezed his small face, it seemed to be tougher. When the phone on the desk of Ding Dong rang, there was a message reminder that the bank had arrived at 25,000 United States dollars, and there was also a picture of a handsome Gundam. Leo, all the money is transferred to you. This time I can draw 3,000. By the way, this time the buyer is the son of the chairman of the Osborne Group. I have a hard time getting on this line. Don't screwed up, please. Single quote. Looked at the news from Kai, smiled, and shook his wrist, 1 meter 3. It looks like it will take a bit of work tonight. What? You said the student's homework. Stop joking, 4th grade is still learning number addition and subtraction, and only the United States can do it. 2 hours later, a shiny 1 meter 3 5-meter high gunpla was completed, towering in the center of the garage, and cracks appeared on the ground. The cold body stands, surrounded by mechanical parts, holding a short gun, and carrying 2 pairs of giant wings on its back, full of mechanical and precision. Even a small exhaust hole is carved. I carefully figured it out, and every scratch, edge and corner is full of texture. Took out the non-ferrous metal coating specially prepared for modeling, and made the final decoration on the appearance of this pure silver. Lu Chong patted his palms, finally done. Single quote. Easily raised the phone and sent a message, K, this model will take about 10 days. After 10 days, I will leave it in the same place, so I won't contact Harry. Kai immediately replied, okay, thanks Leo, I need to call me for anything in the future. Yeah. Gently raised his hand, and the entire model floated up with the support underneath. It weighed 700 or 800 jin and placed it in a corner randomly, covered with a layer of black cloth. It's okay, the task is complete, go back to the room. Raised his leg and walked into the room on the 2nd floor. Behind him were 12 metal iron rods weighing 20 kilograms and the finished equipment. Took a look and confirmed that the uncle and aunt had gone back to the room to sleep before they walked out. It seems that metal rods have been consumed a lot recently, so I need to replenish them. Lu Chong thought to himself, and returned to the room. The metal rod was naturally placed next to him, and at the same time, the iron box containing the food also flew down, and began to eat and stuff. In fact, Lu Chong is really pitiful. He can only feel pleasure when the food passes through his intestines and stomach, and he has not experienced the feeling of full stomach. Every time in less than a minute, his stomach is empty, only the energy in his mind. To show that he has eaten these foods. Rub the still hungry belly, put the empty box back on the cabinet. It seems that the food needs to be replenished, but fortunately I have a sum of money, otherwise the money is not enough. Single quote. Lu Chong sat on the floor, and the surrounding metal surrounded him. The moment he closed his eyes, the whole room was completely dark. Suddenly, in the middle of the room, a little bit of golden light emerged from the surrounding metal blocks and poured into Lu Chong's body. Time passed slowly, and 1 night passed, and the 9th metal rod beside Lu Chong exploded numerous cracks. When the first ray of sunlight hit him, he opened his eyes, the golden pupil light slowly dissipated, and he got up and placed the remaining 3 metal rods on a shelf beside him. The 9 cracked metals behind him flew to the bottom waste bin automatically, and they broke into several pieces. Flexed his muscles and bones, and was about to go downstairs for breakfast. The attributes in his mind had changed. Control point, 51. Strength 7, Defense 6, Speed 8, Spirit 17 inches. Skill, D-level metal control and D-level physical enhancement. Strengthening, Goldite 64%, Copper Skin 10%, Steel Bar 0%, Iron Bone 0%. It was still Uncle George who took Lu Chong to school and stopped smoothly downstairs at Aunt May's house. After a while, Aunt May hugged Peter and walked over. In the car, Aunt May put on delicate makeup, as if nothing had happened, and smiled happily with Peter. Peter, this is Brother Leo, I will let my brother accompany you to school from now on, okay? The thin, white and clean Peter looked at this older brother who was about his height somewhat curiously. He stared at his big eyes, smiled and nodded, Single quote. Leo looked at Peter, who was 1 meter tall, a little embarrassed. He seemed to be 10 centimeters taller than Peter. But he touched Peter's head and took him to school with him. After school, Leo sent Peter to the school bus home. Aunt May would pick him up downstairs, but he slipped away and drove to the junction of Brooklyn and Queens. There is a small warehouse here. It is a small warehouse where Kai and the others store metal, and it is also a place where metal materials are specially prepared for Leo. Closed his eyes and checked. He confirmed that there were no strange metal products around, and walked in comfortably. Looking at the dozens of tons of various metal materials in the warehouse, he he smiled happily, because it gave him great convenience. In order to obtain the metal, he had to go to the Staten Island to get the supply. Now, here it's only 5 kilometers away from my home. Was carrying a small suitcase full of 500 kilograms of metal materials. Without Lu Chong's special control, this box would definitely not be able to bear such a weight. Lu Chong was so cautious. He took the box and got on the bus to go home. He suspended the box slightly on the ground along the way. It was very easy for him with 51 points of control. Returned home and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Successfully shipped back a batch of high-quality steel, which is much better than the ordinary iron bars ordered by Uncle George on the internet, and it can also slightly increase Lu Chong's cultivation speed. Sent a message to Kai on the phone. Kai, I went to the warehouse and took 500 caddies of materials, let me tell you. It's okay, it's not enough. Tell me, by the way, Leo, do you know the 2 monster incidents in Manhattan the day before yesterday? Of course, it's all in the newspaper, what's the matter? Lu Chong was a little confused. I have a gossip. The police found a gold titanium alloy flying knife at the scene. The metal used to make satellites appeared on the scene. Now they are investigating this matter everywhere. I heard that there seems to be people on it. Check it down. So. It's okay, just to tell you, but Leo, you have such a great ability to manipulate metal, doesn't know if it has anything to do with that knife. Kai asked casually. I don't know, I just know about this. Is that metal stolen? Even if you give it to me, I can't polish it. Yes, okay, Leo, I'll leave it to you about the model, I'll be busy. Well, goodbye. Lu Chong tapped these words, but his eyes became serious. Fortunately, I left the scene in time, and also took concealment measures, otherwise I might also be discovered. Far away in a basement on Staten Island, surrounded by all kinds of metal models, a strong white man walked in and picked up the 20-centimeter high fine metal figure in the center to play with up. Leo's craftsmanship is really amazing, it's natural, but how can Boss Crow pay attention to this issue? The last batch of goods was indeed a few pieces lost in Queens. As a result, let us inquire about the news, forget it, I still don't know. Picked up the phone and called Ulysses Crow. Boss, I just play some ordinary metal models. If there is this channel, I should ask other people. I really don't know how gold titanium alloy appears there. FK, it's all right now. Even the FBI is eyeing that piece of metal. The Sisk company might have to cut it off, FK. A roar came from the phone. Directly hung up the phone fiercely. The strong white man also touched his head. Isn't it good to sell Vibram? I do other things. I really don't understand the boss. Kept wiping the model in his hand, still muttering, Leo, I must see you. Your skills are very attractive. A trace of blood flashed in his eyes. The last time I encountered a gold titanium alloy, it was a van with an ordinary appearance, but it was carrying so many high-quality metals, and it stopped at the border of Queens and Staten Island. There was a small factory there, but Lu Chong was nervous and left with 3 pieces of metal. Kay actually asked this question just now to test me. Is he related to these metals? Threw away the metal rod in his hand, looking at the golden eye enhancement that only increased 2%. If Kay really has gold titanium alloys, the lifting speed of these steels is too slow. It looks like this, even if it takes 15 days to fully upgrade the gold eye. Shook his head, maybe because of Hulk, the patrols on the street have increased a lot. It seems that I can practice well and grow up soon. The little man is so uncomfortable. Single quote. After dinner, I started practicing. In the calm night, 6-year-old Peter Parker was still watching cartoons on the sofa. Uncle George is watching a baseball game while Aunt Jenny is cleaning up. And Tony Stark glanced at the news. Drunken opened a bottle of red wine casually. Jarvis, are you awake? Single quote. I'm at your service anytime, sir. Single quote. I want to create a new project folder. The index is called Jericho Missile. Single quote. After half a month, Lu Chong and Peter quickly got acquainted. In the same elementary school, Leo became the only partner of Peter who was afraid of life. Even though Peter Parker is not Spider-Man, he is still a likable kid, very sensitive to numbers. Even Aunt Jenny praised, little Peter is smarter than Leo before. Single quote. Lieben was still a little dissatisfied, but he touched his head. It's roar. Peter's silk was invented by himself. I don't seem to be smarter than him. Single quote. Apart from the progress of the relationship between the two, Luchong's eyes became brighter and brighter during this period of time. This is still a question raised by Uncle George. Standing in front of the mirror, looking at his piercing black pupils, like two warm black pearls, they kept emitting a touch of golden light. Glanced at the golden eye that had been strengthened 99%, Luchong's eyes widened, and the golden light between his pupils lit up. Two golden beams shot out from the eyes and rushed straight towards the mirror. A part of the golden light reflected on Luchong himself without any problems, but the golden light touched the mirror surface, but it quickly dimmed. An inexplicable trace appeared, and slowly spread, and after a while, it stained most of the mirror body. His eyes closed, the source of the golden light disappeared, and the traces stopped spreading. When Luchong opened his eyes again, the eyes returned to their original state. At this moment, most of the mirror in front of me has become a metal plate, and it fits closely with the rest of the mirror. Lightly tapped with his fingers, and after confirming that it was the most popular iron plate on the market, Leo thought about it. Silently took out his mobile phone, and placed an order to buy an interview mirror. By the way, the mirror was removed, then, tonight, finish the strengthening of the golden eyes. Single quote. After eating a whole box of Dove chocolates, wiped his mouth, sat down calmly, full of energy surrounding Luchong's mind, feeling the chocolate disappearing quickly in his stomach, and couldn't help licking his lips. Took two metal rods in his hands, closed his eyes, and felt the power of the metal. A little bit of golden light came out again, merged into Luchong's body, followed the thought, and flooded his eyes. Golden light penetrated in, and all the power accumulated in his eyes also poured out, directly rendering the entire eyeball into gold. Luchong felt that the energy in his mind was pouring out, his eyes were like a dry sponge, not enough energy to absorb the accumulated energy. The metal rod in his hand began to gradually crack, and the color became more dim. With a soft click, the two metal rods broke apart at the same time and fell on the carpet. Two dazzling golden lights also shot out, illuminating the entire room. Control point, 52. Strength 7 Defense 7 Speed 8 Spirit 19 inches. Skill, D-level metal control and D-level physical enhancement. Strengthening, golden eye 100%, copper skin 11%, steel bar 0%, iron bone 0%. Derivative technique. Destroying golden eyes. Don't be fooled by any abilities, see through all illusions, enhance visual observation, metallize objects. The golden light suddenly dissipated, and in an instant, Luchong's eyes returned to their usual appearance. But deep in the dark pupil, there is a small golden spot hidden. This little light movement in the middle of the night did not attract anyone's attention, just like someone in the room turned on the light and immediately turned it on. Only Luchong laughed. The two additional points of mental power made him see the world differently, basically twice the mental power of ordinary people, making Luchong a little overexcited. Say something silently in my heart, breaking my golden eyes. The two golden lights in his eyes exploded, and the pupils were dyed golden yellow, which contained a strange light. Looking around, with a thought, all the walls of the house disappeared cleanly, and everyone within a few hundred meters around him could be seen clearly, and even the characteristics of living bodies would be automatically marked. I can see my skin through my clothes, my eyes condensed slightly, and even my skin disappeared. Can clearly see the subcutaneous muscle tissue and the blood flow, and you can see clearly own bones, meridians. Blinked his eyes and immediately returned to normal. Luchong clutched his beating heart, a little irritating. Picked up a porcelain cup, thinking in his heart, a golden light shot out of his eyes, and concentrated on the cup. In less than 2 seconds, when the golden light converges, the cartoon porcelain cup in his hand has become a metal cup. With a virtual grip on the right hand, the cup body can be twisted, it's really metal, manipulable metal. Single quote. But, I felt it carefully, this material is too common, it's a bit inferior than the one bought online. For Luchong, it was of no use, so he restored it to its original state. He stretched out a finger and tapped it slightly. With a strange wave, the cup returned to its original state. Came to the metallized mirror, but could not restore it to its original state. It turned out that after more than 3 minutes, the metallization can no longer be restored. accurately measured his new skills, and Lu Chong's previously exhausted spirit was refreshed. Keep practicing. Took out a few metal rods, and in the dark room, a little golden light appeared again. Kai looked at the 1-meter-high gunpla on the truck, and touched it with trembling hands, touching the smooth and tough metal lines, row upon row of accessories, bumps, and natural appearance, just like a real Gundam. The robot is average. Ah! Kai yelled comfortably, as if sucking white powder, and his whole body was shaking a little. Sure enough, big. It is the kingly way, I also want a big model, a big one. Early the next morning, Lu Chong's phone kept vibrating. When he opened it, dozens of messages were sent by Kai. Leo, I also want a big model, a big one. Single quote. The big model is the truth. Single quote. Why didn't I think of it before? Leo, I want a big one, how about a 2-meter one? Single quote. I'm going crazy, Harry has come to remind me, I don't want to give it to him. Single quote. But my boss has to contact Osborne, shit. Single quote. Lu Chong didn't understand, what's wrong? Isn't it just a metal model? It was put in 5 days ago. Why did you send me a message today? I don't understand the hearts of model enthusiasts like Kai. For Kai, he loves models more than women, which is a bit sick. Kai kept stroking the exquisite gunpla in the car, and her soul trembled from time to time. The flying feeling made the little brothers around leave with interest. No problem, Kay, what do you want? But 1 meter and 5 is almost the same, if it's high, it's too much. Lu Chong replied indifferently. Kay sent the pictures that he had prepared long ago, and paid $50,000 directly. Leo, this model is really wonderful. Quickly, make it as soon as possible. It will be completed in 3 days. I will add $50,000 to you. Quote. Lu Chong was surprised when he saw this news. Kai should be the first senior model player he knew. After he bought the first model from him, he kept buying back and he had already purchased 40 or 50. A small all-metal model cost tens of thousands of dollars. Is also so obsessed with the model, countless times want to meet Lu Chong, but was rejected, so he took the initiative to provide the metal, and also vary according to the rules without installing a camera. Okay, I will try my best. After Lu Chong finished speaking, he put his phone aside. After all, making models is just a source of money, enough is enough, there is no need to work hard. Packed his school bags, ready to go to school. Kai is still in the truck box, stroking the model and can't help himself. A big bearded man with sunglasses walked over in a hurry, and asked the younger brother who was standing by, where is Kai? Car, in the car. The bearded, boom boom, kicked the 2-legged carriage. Kay, come out for me. Boss, why are you here? Kai walked down reluctantly, somewhat strange. Shit, because of the broken knife, the cable of Sisk has been broken, and it will be on me if I don't leave. As soon as Crow mentioned this, he smashed the sunglasses in his hand. Hurry up and follow me to Osborne to see if I can pick up Osborne's medicines and weapons. The water in New York is too deep, so I should do it anyway. We are all done. Tomorrow we will go back to Africa. Stark Industries will provide us with weapons. Selling weapons there is more profitable than New York. And the people from Wakanda have contacted me again. It seems that there is a big deal this time, so I won't stay in New York. Crow walked to a tall Hummer. Go to Osborne Company. Kay was taken aback. My model is not ready yet, I want a big model. At night, Crow was thinking about the idea of vanadium metal, but he saw Kay walking by himself. Boss, if you want to keep someone in New York, I can stay. No need, the price has been negotiated, especially for Stark Industries. Although the price is a bit more expensive, but the goods are good, those old asterisk will definitely like it. Rockets manufactured by Graham Industry. Kay is also a little curious, the world-famous Stark Industry is willing to sell it to us. Tony Stark doesn't seem to be like it on TV. Who would talk to Stark? I'm looking for Obadiah. He is a well-known arms dealer in our circle. I heard that he also has a deal with those people in Afghanistan, so the talk is very easy. By the way, what do you want to stay for? I ordered a large model. It may take a few days to complete. I want to take the model back. Kai said frankly, after all, everyone knows his hobby. FK, I have so many women on the boat, You are still playing with those models, you just take that person back. He can make models for you in the future. Crow cursed and drove Kai away. Kay's eyes lit up when I heard it. Asterisk 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 it, yes. It's not enough to take Leo away directly. In the future, he can make a model for me alone. After 2 years in New York, I almost forget that I am a bad guy. Took out the phone. Leo, I have prepared a big surprise for you. It's already in the warehouse. Come get it tomorrow. Single quote. Lu Chong, who continued to practice, felt the vibration of the phone, and his hands did not move. The phone floated over, saw the message above, did not think much, and replied, okay. Continues to absorb the metal. The progress of the copper skin is already 14%, and it seems that there is hope to be 15% today. Early the next morning, watching the progress of the copper skin that had only slowly increased by 2%, and the residue of 9 broken metal rods around him, he sighed helplessly. The progress is not too slow, but comparing the efficiency of that gold titanium alloy, it is a bit uncomfortable. By the way, why would Kay send me this kind of news? It's strange, is it really a surprise for me, isn't it a high-grade metal? Lu Chong thought about the high-quality materials mentioned several times before. But there are still some doubts in my heart. Okay, let's check it out after school. Hope Kay will not lie to me. Single quote. At noon, Kai brought 7 little brothers to this small warehouse. Everyone wore a pistol around his waist. Even Kai held an Uzi submachine gun in his hand. A metal figure 10 centimeters tall came out to play with. Brother K, are you really going to kill the modeler? A little brother asked indifferently from the side. Kai's eyes went round, and the metal man in his hand swung over, and the slightly sharp metal base slammed the little brother's head. A spatter of blood came out and stained Kai's face. The little brother was knocked to the ground in an instant. After a few twitches, he fainted, and the blood flowed from his head. For a while, on the ground. A pool of blood gathered. Kai stared fiercely at the 6 people around him. I told you. Is to take him away, not kill him. You are not allowed to shoot, have you heard? Yes, yes. The remaining 6 little brothers said tremblingly. I have heard of this model lunatic under Crow a long time ago, but I didn't expect to be so mad. He would kill if he didn't agree with him, so just stay quiet. Kay didn't care at all. The model wiped the clothes, still thinking about it. When Leo is tied back, I must ask him to make me a 2-meter model. Ah. Awesome. Single quote. Just thinking about it, Kai's body was trembling a little, and there was an obsessive smile on his face, with a trace of blood stains, but it was so hideous. Around 4 o'clock, Lu Chong came to the alley of the small warehouse again, but unexpectedly sensed that a small surveillance probe was set up in the corner of the wall. Frowned, the probe was instantly distorted into a small ball, and at the same time, the screen of the computer in the hands of a younger brother in the warehouse also shook and went black. The little brother who was dozing off suddenly woke up, glanced at the computer, and hurriedly said, Brother Kai. The monitoring has been broken. Maybe someone is coming. Kai has been thinking about it all the time, going back to make a set of real-life models, and sealing people in metal models. It would be more exciting, but the little brother disturbed his dreams. Picked up the gun on the side and smiled tremblingly. Hurry up, Boss Crow's boat is already waiting at the pier, and quickly take Leo away. I'm all a little excited. Single quote. Lu Chong had already sensed something was wrong, his eyes blinked, and a slight golden light appeared. He looked through the walls and saw the scene in the warehouse. In the small warehouse, there are 7 burly men with pistols standing, and 1 person is lying on the ground, but the breath of life is already very weak, looking like they are about to die at any time. What's the situation? Lu Chong frowned tightly. Could it be that the man lying on the ground is K? And the other people were robbers who had conspired against Kai. They happened to run into Kai, who came out alone and gave Leo a surprise, and killed him. Lu Chong thought about it carefully, and he hesitated very much. If he could not get in, if he exposed his superpower, there would be no days for steady cultivation. Picked up the phone. K, you won't be in the warehouse. Single quote. Still decided to try it out first, but he watched one of the brawny guys holding the AK, skillfully took the phone out of his pocket, opened the password, and replied. Leo, we had an agreement. You said that if I don't see you, you will always make models for me, right? Single quote. Looking at the news from Kai, Lu Chong lowered his head in disappointment. K, you lied to me, and you showed up here with a weapon, what do you want to do? Single quote. Looking at Kai, who was still raising his gun at the door, and three people ambushing by the door, Lu Chong's eyes instantly became cold. A piece of metal melted into a small thin mask, which was gently pressed on his face. The small school bag was thrown aside, and he strode towards the warehouse. In the warehouse, a younger brother said to Kai, Brother Kai, I feel a little uneasy. What if he doesn't come alone? Kill other people, I just want Leo, I want him to make a model, no one can stop it. What if he doesn't want it? Kai's eyes reddened slightly, I have to give me whatever I want, whether he wants it or not, and tie him back to me first. I have a way. Quang dang. The small iron gate hit the wall and aroused a lot of dust. The sunlight shone through the gate and pulled out a long shadow. Even if the two people near the door didn't see clearly, they immediately jumped up, and the remaining one quickly went out and looked at it twice, confirming that only Lu Chong was alone. In the smoke and dust, the two younger brothers who wanted to throw Leo may have estimated his height, and they collided face to face and smashed against Lu Chong below him. With a thought, a piece of iron pushed the two of them back vigorously. They rolled a few times before hitting the steel on the side, and they looked like they could not get up. Gently raised his hand, and the iron door suddenly closed. Click. With a soft sound, the door was locked, leaving only a dim fluorescent tube hanging high on the roof. One person behind and 6 people in front surrounded Lu Chong. When the dust fell, Lu Chong's small figure appeared in everyone's sight. However, his small body of 1.2 meters was extremely weak among a group of big men over 1.8 meters. Looked at the big white man standing in the middle with a silver mask, K. Who are you? Where's Leo? K looked at the little bit in front of him and was a little confused, what's the situation? I am Leo, K, what do you mean? A slightly distorted voice came from under the mask, but the tender voice was still audible. Are you Leo? Will you make a gold model? A somewhat neurotic Kai said to the people around him, haha, he said he is Leo. My kid, I'm not kidding you, what about Leo? K's muzzle was aimed at his head. K, you disappointed me so much. I thought we would become friends. The model in your pocket is the last time I made ace by myself. Lu Chong said dully. K looked at Lu Chong but laughed, ah ha ha, it turns out that Leo is so small. I said why you don't want to come out to meet, ha ha. At the end, the conversation changed, and suddenly he said, tie him up. The person behind him suddenly hugged Lu Chong, and several people around him surrounded him. After a while, they tied him tightly with a rope. He was pulled in front of Kai without resistance. Kai held his head and said a little savagely, I don't care if you are Leo or not, and now I can't wait for him to come. I only want a model. You are the best. Can make metal models, otherwise. Grabbed Lu Chong's head and smiled cruelly, I will melt you into the metal to make a model, hee hee. Let's go, Boss Crow has sent a message, time is running out. Kai took the lead to leave. A little brother stopped Kai. Brother Kai, he is still angry, do you want to take it back? Kai looked at the little brother who was still lying on the ground, stretched out his hand and took out a pistol equipped with a silencer. Let him die. He was about to pull the trigger. But a huge force took his arm to turn a few turns, boom, boom, boom. A few soft sounds, like a person knocking on the door hurriedly. In just 2 seconds, all of them were shot in the heart by Kai. The 6 younger brothers looked at Kai who raised their guns and shot them at them. Finally, before dying, they didn't think about how they had offended brother Kai again and even wanted to kill them. Kai looked at the 6 people who had fallen in front of him, and his arms trembled. Why is it like this? It was not my shot. I do not have. Shouted in a sharp voice. Lu Chong, who was standing on the side, pushed his arm hard, 2 silver lights flashed from behind, all the ropes that tightly bound him broke, and fell to the ground. It's you. It's you. Kai turned the tip of his gun and aimed it at Lu Chong's head again. This time, his index finger gripped the trigger tightly, you're the one who killed them. I didn't see any movement of Lu Chong either. The pistol in Kai's hand trembled, and the magazine fell out directly. As soon as the barrel was retreated, the loaded bullet also flew out and hit Kai's forehead. You guys wanted to kill me first. Kai, I really don't want to kill you, you are my biggest customer. Lu Chong said distressedly, but you have touched the bottom line in my heart. No, no. Leo, I didn't want to kill you, I just want to take you to Africa with me, make a model for me, I didn't want to kill you. Kai felt the bullet on his forehead, shaking a little said. Model. K, you are really a lunatic. Lu Chong's eyes were full of disappointment. He thought he could meet a new friend after a transaction for more than a year, but because of the model, his life was needed. Threaten him. Lu Chong turned to the injured person on the ground, turned him over, looked at the big cracked wound on his head, patted his face. Hey, hold on. Sober up. Although I don't know who he is, he doesn't seem to be with Kai. Kam was beaten so badly after all. Kai saw this, drew a knife from his waist and slammed it into the back of Lu Chong's head. Without advancing a few centimeters, he could not control the knife in his hand, and was firmly pulled in the air. Lu Chong turned around and looked at Kai, who was crazy and a little scared. Who is he? Innocent passerby. If you let me go, I'll tell you. Kai let go of the hand holding the knife, put it in his pocket, and looked at Lu Chong in front of him, but he felt a little broken. Ah, the man on the ground groaned feebly, very weak. Lu Chong just glanced with his head tilted. Kai took out the metal model from his pocket in the blink of an eye and threw it at Lu Chong with all his strength. This action completely angered him. Turning his head to stare at Kai, two dazzling golden lights suddenly appeared in his eyes, shining on Kai's body. The clothes and the flesh are all metallized, starting from the chest, and quickly extending up and down the whole body. Since you like models so much, stay with it forever. 5 seconds later, a shiny metal figure was born, standing in the middle of the small warehouse, holding up the metal figure in her hands that could no longer be put down, and blending perfectly with it. The extremely delicate metal face was full of despair and horror. Hey, man, who are you? How come you are here? Lu Chong knelt down to look at the injured person, and took out his mobile phone to make an emergency call. The man opened his mouth and several syllables appeared. What did you say? Lu Chong fell down and listened carefully. G. Claw. U. Lisa. SC. Claw. Before finishing speaking, her head tilted and she was out of breath. Confused the name, and put down the phone in his hand. Looking at the messy warehouse and this huge metal model, Lu Chong couldn't help sighing. Waved his hand, all the guns in the warehouse fell apart and broke into several pieces, a few pieces of metal kept all the bodies together. Turned around and prepared to leave, the door opened, and as Lu Chong left, the door closed again, and the whole warehouse fell into endless darkness. With a light turn of the palm of his hand, the old door lock was completely twisted and locked, and it could no longer be opened normally. Picked up his little school bag, turned a few turns, and fell into the crowd. Lu Chong, who returned home, did not have any desire to practice today. He sat at his desk in a daze. Aunt Jenny knocked on the door and walked in with a cup of hot milk. Leo, I saw something wrong with you during dinner today. Did something happen in school? A thick and rough arm was put on Leo's small shoulder, and Uncle George came to Leo. No, the school is pretty good, but some kids don't want to play with me, but I don't care, they are too naive. Leo rubbed his stiff little face and responded with a smile. No. Aunt Jenny brought a stool and sat next to Lu Chong. Leo, my little baby, it's been 5 years. The first time I saw you so unhappy today, my aunt is very sad. Stretched out both hands and pulled up Leo's right hand, his eyes were a little red, as if he was about to cry. George also put his other hand on Aunt Jenny's shoulder, and embraced the two of them. Deep voice whispered, Leo, from the first day we brought you home, Jenny and I have regarded you as my own son. You are very good and sensible. When you accompany us on our first birthday, it is the best time we have experienced. I am very grateful to God for making my life so beautiful and giving me such a well-behaved son. Let me turn 40 years old, and have a beloved baby, we are willing to give everything for you. In the past year, we have been busy and did not accompany you well. I heard the sound of the grinding wheel spinning in the garage. Jenny has left tears several times. Leo, it's not that I said you. We want you to be like an ordinary like children, watch TV shows with us, go shopping with us, not making money, or in other words, not working so hard. Jenny also wiped her tears with a tissue, and nodded. Leo, in the past year, I feel that after you fell in love with making models, you have alienated us a lot. We don't want you to make money. I just hope you will be happy. Big. Said. He took the little Leo into his arms. Leo reached out and hugged them. Well, uncle and aunt, I'm fine, but on the way home today, I saw an accident and someone died, but it's fine, aunt, let's go watch TV. Uncle George touched Leo's little head. Leo, you must be careful outside, and you must hurry up when you encounter bad things. You are only a child. Leo took the hands of the two of them, went out of the room, turned off the lights, and walked downstairs, while saying, Aunt Jenny, is the Big Bang Theory starting to update again, as if Sheldon was talking girlfriend. Well, Leonard and Petunia are together again, it's interesting, let me tell you. If you don't listen, I want to watch it myself, it's been a long time since I watched TV. Jenny, Leo, I'm going to get a drink. Would you like a pizza to take out? Eating cheese and sausage flavor, I want to. The voices of a few people were getting farther and farther away, and they could no longer hear them clearly, except for happy laughter. Moonlight spilled on Leo's desk through the window, and a pen on the table was shining brightly. A photo of Leo's 6th birthday family was neatly placed in a corner of the table. The three people in the photo, there was an extremely bright smile on his face. Just like now. 6 months later, in February 2008, Leo, who had just celebrated his 11th birthday, wanted to go to Las Vegas. Although Uncle George disagreed very much, he couldn't hold Leo's hard work. Okay, but I still warn you, you can go, we are just like traveling, not allowed to enter the casino, cannot go to the bar, can only stay at most for 3 days. Well, I just go and have a look, and I won't run around. Leo agreed firmly. Jenny also seemed to be a little excited. Seeing George agreeing, she cheered, Oh. I'm going to ask for leave, George, I can't wait to book the flight ticket soon. George rubbed Leo's head with a smile. Your Aunt Jenny has long wanted to see it again, and it is considered to have fulfilled one of her wishes. Go, kid, pack up, our family is going to travel. With a tap on the back of Leo's head, George said with a hint of excitement. Leo returned to his room, and pulled out a handwritten report from the drawer on the side, with some strange timelines written on it in Chinese. Iron Man 1, February 11, 2008, Las Vegas Casino. February 13, Afghanistan, Jericho Missile Experiment, Stark was tied up. In October, the exact time is unclear, Stark Tower, War. November. There are always a few timelines written down below, but only the line in October is marked with key points. Took a closer look, hesitated, took the eraser and cleaned it. Looked at the panel in his mind. Control point, 73 feet. Strength 11, Defense 17, Speed 9, Spirit 19 inches. Skill, D-level Metal Control and D-level Physical Enhancement. Strengthening, GoldenEye 100%, Copper Skin 100%, Steel Bar 1%, Iron Bone 0%. Derivative Technique. Destroying golden eyes. Don't be fooled by any abilities, see through all illusions, enhance visual observation, metalize objects. Don't move the golden body, enhance great defense power, stand on the ground with both feet, you will have infinite physical strength, the body will recover faster, and will not be moved by external force. Touched the still soft skin on his body, it was not like last month at all. At that time, my body was as hard as iron, so I had to wrap it up with clothes and wear a mask in class. The body shook, and a golden light appeared from all over his body. An inexplicable layer of golden energy surfaced on the surface of Leo's body, covering the clothes on his body. At the same time, a warm current surged from the soles of the feet, the body was connected to the earth, and the whole body was full of strength. I have tested it in the garage. This layer of golden light can't be broken by himself, and can only shake it reluctantly, whether it is smashed with 2,000 kilograms of metal blocks or a giant metal warhead that breaks the sound barrier. Walking around at random, Jin Guang dimmed with Leo's thought. In his normal state, the defensive power of the surface of the body has also been greatly improved, and when he slashed hard with a knife, only a white mark appeared. Although he can't fight bullets, Leo can confidently say, no bullets can come near me. Such self-confidence finally made Leo a little dared to contact the mainline characters. Aunt Jenny ran up with excited footsteps, holding Uncle George's cell phone in her hand. Leo. Leo. The ticket has been booked. Look, the ticket for the morning of the 9th, the day after tomorrow. Aunt Jenny, I heard Uncle George said that you seem to have been to Las Vegas, right? Leo looked at the ticket message on the phone and gave Jenny a smile. Aunt Jenny brought Leola to her side and said, as if recalling, Uncle George never told you. Then I will tell you, it is interesting. That was 12 years ago, at that time. Leo was by Jenny's side, listening with interest to their previous love history, the scene of their first meeting in Las Vegas. George was packing his suitcases in the room, listening to the laughter coming from next door, shook his head, showing a slight smile. 3 days later, a family of 3 boarded a plane from New York to Las Vegas. After 3 hours and 40 minutes of high-altitude flight, finally reached the destination. Leo looked at the neon lights and drunken lights below on the plane, and couldn't help but get a little excited. But looking at his height of 1.25 meters, he wilted again. After getting off the plane, the 3 of them went straight to the booked hotel and put down their luggage. Jenny and George looked at the sky tower outside the French window and hugged each other fiercely. There are 2 rooms in a small suite. Leo lives in the one inside. He has to go through Uncle George's room to go out. George glanced at his watch and lay down on the bed. Leo, rest early. Uncle George, it's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Las Vegas is a city that never sleeps. At night is the busiest time. At this point, many projects are not open. George stretched his waist. I have arranged everything. I will leave at 6 o'clock. After eating a delicious buffet, I will show you the musical fountain. There are pirate shows and volcanic eruptions, and roller coasters. Leo, go to bed. Jenny pushed Leo gently into the suite inside. This is no better than New York. You can't go out alone. Here is known as the Sin City. In the room, Leo took out the map prepared by the hotel. Tony Stark shouldn't go to low-level casinos. There are 7 top-level hotels and casinos. Let me think about where he will come from. Come out. 2 days later, George and the others slept again until 12 o'clock in the morning, and the room service has delivered breakfast, and lunch. Leo, who got up early, had finished eating. He continued to look at the photos on his mobile phone. He was entangled at the entrances of the 2 hotels. The decorations at the entrances of these 2 houses look like they have statues of these fountains. Embarrassing. Leo, why do you get up so early every day? Yesterday, you even went to the casino door to check out. Are you looking for something? George asked with a cake in his mouth. Well, I heard that Tony Stark is also in Las Vegas. Before I wanted to see him, I couldn't enter the door of his company. Maybe I can see him today. Why do you want to see that playboy? There is no intersection between us and his rich man. Aunt Jenny said. It's okay, just give him a model. I prepared it for him a long time ago. Okay, but we can't delay it too long. Will we have to catch a plane at noon tomorrow? Well, don't worry. Leo selected a few times and left the last photo, which is the New York hotel in Las Vegas. I heard that there is a makeup party tonight. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Leo and his uncle and aunt came to the entrance of the New York hotel, the fountain in the center, and the human statues carved out of white marble around them, the most important of which was the blonde reporter hiding aside. Leo also a smile appeared. Strode over to the reporter. Hello, sister reporter. Christine Everhart looked at the child in front of him, then glanced at his chest. He didn't bring his ID with him. Squatted down and looked at Leo. Hello, little brother, how do you know that sister is a reporter? My sister is so beautiful, I remember it when I saw it on TV. Christine smiled and looked at the little brother in front of him. Why are you here alone, your parents? It's dangerous here, go back. Leo waved his hand and greeted Uncle George on the side of the road. Is my sister waiting here? This is a secret, you go back quickly, this is not suitable for children to play. Christine looked at the manuscript in his hand. Leo also smiled, and stood silently behind Christine. Christine didn't pay too much attention to Leo. He looked at the manuscript in his hand intently. He couldn't be influenced by Leo, who had only found out the news with difficulty. Leo was excited, and he was about to see the real Tony Stark, the Iron Man who was, like a mortal and a god. The minute passed by, and finally at around 11 o'clock in the evening, When Jenny wanted to come up and take Leola back, there was a movement at the door of the hotel. Tony Stark walked out with a sulky burgundy shirt and black suit jacket, a pair of light red sunglasses, a big back and a mustache. Harpy walked in front, followed by 3 big bodyguards in suits, striding towards the black Rolls-Royce not far away. Leo's eyes lit up, and he gently pushed Christine, who was still reading the information. Christine also reacted and hurriedly stuffed the information into the bag, and hurriedly followed in high heels. Mr. Stark, excuse me, Mr. Stark. At last he called out Stark before getting into the car. I'm Christine Everhart, a reporter for Vanity Fair, can I ask you a few questions? Leo followed behind, like a little follower. Tony has no intention to look back. Happy leaned forward and said, it's punctual. Really? Hearing this sentence, Tony, who didn't want to bother, turned around with interest. Hi, Stark has a smile on his face. Hi, Christine replied. Well, let her come over. Stark waved, and the bodyguard let go. Leo also followed smoothly, but the little man firmly caught Tony Stark's eyes. Christine had just arrived in front of Stark, and hurriedly interviewed, some people call you a modern Leonardo, what do you think of this? Stark turned his gaze from Leo to the reporter, looked at her beautiful face, smiled and said, I don't know why, I don't paint. What about another nickname, Death Merchant? What do you think? Stark lifted his chin slightly, that's not bad, I guess you are Berkeley. It's Brown University. Well, Miss Brown. Stark looked at Christine and said solemnly. This world is not perfect, but we have no choice. I promise you that if one day we don't have to trade weapons for peace, I will rebuild the children's hospital. A serious way of speaking made Leo on the side cover his mouth and smile. Christine narrowed his eyes slightly, have you practiced this many times? Practice in the mirror before going to bed every day. Stark replied without hesitation. After listening, Leo's eyes narrowed even more, and Stark kept looking at Leo again. Christine replied, I can see it. I want to take you to see with my own eyes. Stark stared into her eyes seriously. Can you answer seriously? Christine flushed. Okay, to answer you seriously, my dad has a philosophy of life, I don't want to be bullied, the stick is thicker than a person. For the stick seller, it is indeed right. My dad helped defeat Asterisk and participated in the Manhattan Project. Many people, including your university professor, many people said that he, wait, is this kid who is laughing all the time yours? Tucker said, but suddenly pointed at Leo who was smiling. Looking at the corners of Leo's mouth, Stark said, I have tolerated you for a long time, kid. Is it really funny? Can't interviews have some professionalism? Christine saw Leo, who had been following him, hurriedly said to Stark, Mr. Stark, I don't know this kid, I don't know who he is. Sorry, Mr. Stark, I came in with the reporter on purpose. I want to chat with you alone. Leo smiled and looked up at Tony Stark. Stark looked at Leo, and the people around him took a few steps back. Only Happy was still with him, was closer to Leo than Stark. Mr. Stark, in fact, I want to say that people only know how to grow when they have experienced it, sorry. Leo looked at Stark, who was still arrogant. What? Tony looked puzzled. Leo took out an exquisite metal model from his pocket and handed it to Stark. Give it to you, Mr. Stark. Stark put his hands behind him, and took a step back. Oh, I don't like people handing me things. Harpy reluctantly stepped forward and took the thing in Leo's hand, then transferred it to Stark's hand, and Tony took it. A small metal model. For you, goodbye, I believe we will see you again. Leo watched Stark take it. After saying this, he hurriedly left and returned to George not far away. Uncle sighed. Stark glanced at the metal model in his hand, and was about to throw it on the car, but the exquisite shape and feel made him feel unwilling to throw it away. Christine came forward again. Sorry, can we continue? Of course, you continue. Conceived a bit, and continued, but many people say that he is making a fortune. Tony took off his glasses and said seriously, tell me, why don't we report that we have saved millions of lives with advanced medical technology, or used smart crops to solve famine problems? These are all military funding, my dear. Christine was instantly attracted by the serious Tony under the glasses, and a special light appeared in his eyes. Leo saw Christine getting in Tony's luxury car, looking at the cars going away, but silently said, "I look forward to your return, Iron Man." On the way back to the hotel, Uncle George asked, "Leo, how did you know Tony Stark? He is a world-famous weapon manufacturer." "Uncle George, will change, he will become a hero." "Forget it, you kid, give me a good boy, don't learn from him." George glanced at Leo. The two laughed. After the 3-day happy vacation, the three returned to a peaceful life. Aunt Jenny took the dozens of photos that had just been printed out, and she sat on the bed with a smile to select them. She was about to pick some good-looking group photos into the frame and bind them. Leo glanced at the topics in the group. There was a discussion about why Kay didn't bubbling for a while, but he quickly calmed down. "I also successfully found a new channel to purchase steel. It was a small warehouse 1 kilometer near home. Although the quality was worse than what Kai originally provided, it was stable and legal." Seeing that the strengthening progress of the steel bar is getting slower and slower, there is also some anxiety in my heart. But there are some things that can't come in a hurry. Leo believes that soon, he will have the resources to come to him. Calmly gathered 4 metal rods around him, and continued to practice. A little bit of golden light slowly merged into the meridians and collaterals on the whole body, as well as the internal organs, giving it a golden light. Christine and Tony rolled over and fell to the ground. Early the next morning, Christine woke up naked from a big bed. The originally dark room slowly lit up under Jarvis's control. "Good morning, it is 7 o'clock in the morning, the temperature is 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and the weather is cloudy." A very anthropomorphic mechanical sound rang. The huge French window next to the bed gradually changed from pitch black to transparent, and when you look around, there is a sunny blue sea outside the window. The height of the waves is between the shoulders and the waist, suitable for surfing. The big waves will arrive at 10:52. This is a mansion built on the edge of a cliff in Malibu, California. It is also the home of the billionaire Tony Stark. Ms. Pepper, who is in a capable suit, drove Christine out of the villa very skillfully, and hurriedly left after looking at a bunch of things on the schedule. 3 hours later, I received a call from Larry at the airport and went to the basement reluctantly. Tony drove a high song, doing maintenance work in front of his favorite classic car until Pepper walked in. Smart Jarvis saw Pepper, who was on the phone, and turned off the music automatically. "Don't turn off my music." Stark carefully disassembled the parts of the car. Pepper hung up the phone. "You should be on the other side of the earth at this time. What does she want to do with me? I can only bear it." Pepper thought for a second, and replied helplessly. "Then why do you want to kick me out of here?" Tony looked at the firmware in his hand seriously. "Your plane should have taken off an hour and a half ago," Pepper said, looking at him still playing with the car. "Interesting, that's my plane, I should wait for me." I installed the parts in my hand, confirmed that there was no problem, and stood up. Pepper still thought about what to say, but he continued to be snatched up by Tony. "If the private jet is not waiting for the owner, why do we need a private jet?" This kind of cynical character makes her speechless. There are a few more things to say here. Pepper sorted everything out for Tony, and only needed Stark to give a decisive answer at the end. A few minutes later, Tony decided to buy an expensive painting and signed a document. Besides, Tony suddenly learned that today is Pepper's birthday. "Did you celebrate your birthday?" "Correct. I know, today. Well, it's the same day as last year, it's weird." Pepper cocked his mouth, seeming to enjoy Tony's unexpected appearance. "Buy yourself a present for me." Stark smiled and looked at Pepper. "I already bought it. How about the gift?" Stared at the blonde girl and said, "Oh, great, very tasteful, thank you, Mr. Stark." Potts also grinned and looked at Tony. "You're welcome, Miss Potts." Stark stared at Pepper's eyes, unable to move them away. "By the way, I found this in the car. Look at what it is." Pepper blushed and looked at Stark, and suddenly took this out of his pocket, and a small metal piece came out. "Oh, that's great, I was just thinking, where did this model go?" Stark took it and looked at it carefully. "Pepper, you see what this looks like?" Pepper thought for a while, and said, "Where did this model come from?" "A kid, an Asian kid, gave it to me last night. I don't know why. It feels very familiar, but there are some, I can't say it." Tony turned the truncated cone-shaped model in his hand a few times, and there are several electromagnetic waves on the bottom. Coil-like decoration. Anyway, this is a very good model, isn't it? Pepper said. Yeah, that's right, I'm sending you off. Stark stuffed the small round table into Pepper's hand, drank the coffee in her hand, and turned to the garage. She played with it in her hand, looked at the back of Tony and Harpy driving away, and placed the round table on her desk normally. Thought for a while, but turned it upside down. The small side was placed at the bottom, and the large side with the coil was facing the top. It feels more reasonable like this. In this way, Pepper put a small model of the original arc reactor on his desk. The next night, Pepper was woken up from his sleep by a phone call from the military. What? Kidnapping. But at this time, Pepper couldn't leave Stark company. There were too many things for her to complete. Tony could disappear, but Pepper couldn't. Held the head of the bed tightly, the model that Tony gave him last, with blue veins emerging from his slender hands. Tony's good brother Colonel Rod also received the news. Without hesitation, he took a few people and drove a helicopter to the battlefield where Tony was abducted, trying to find a trace. 2 days later, Tony suddenly opened his eyes from the hospital bed. The effect of the anesthetic had not been completely over, and his hands and feet were a little stiff and he did not listen. Struggled to pull out the oxygen tube that was inserted into the respiratory tract from his nostril. Then, the animal's survival instinct made him try to pick up the water glass from the side, but he was bound by the 2 wires on his chest. If I were you, I would not waste my energy. Ethan was facing a small mirror that was still intact and shaved his chin. Tony pulled off the gauze on his chest, and a simple metal device was deeply embedded in his body. At that moment, Stark looked at the top of the damp and crude dark cave with despair in his heart. Stark sat on the edge of the bed, trying to use the small mirror to observe what was on his chest. In this perilous situation, there was something like porridge cooked in the pot, and Ethan continued to whistle. Leisurely put the taken-out shrapnel into a small glass bottle and handed it to Tony. Even said to Stark, "In our village, there are many such people. We call them the living dead, because within a week, shrapnel will enter their vital organs." Even if this was the case, Stark, who was confused about the situation, did not let Stark hear the grief in the words. "What is this? Electromagnet. Connected to the car battery, it can prevent shrapnel from entering your heart." Stark's brain turned frantically, analyzed everything around him, and tied his dirty shirt on his chest. Ethan is a full suit, and the bow tie is also very classic and neat. The left pocket even reveals a little scarf. In this dim cave, compared with the embarrassed Tony, it is like 2 different worlds. People. But he taught Tony to be in danger, looking at the surveillance camera, that's right, smile. This relaxed state even made Stark suspect that the man in front of him was sent by his kidnapper. We have seen it at the Bern Technology Conference in Switzerland, 1999. I don't remember. You certainly don't remember. If I drink like you, I can't stand up, let alone an integrated circuit speech. Ethan's face has always been faintly smiled, bringing Stark a little bit of peace. Before he finished speaking, there was a shout from the door, and Ethan instantly became nervous. Hurriedly came to Stark's side, pulled up the nervous Tony with both hands, calmly said, "Follow me, just follow me." The bearded deputy chief came in with a few gunmen. Through Ethan's translation, they knew that their purpose was to make Stark build the Jericho missile that had just been tested. Stark refused, but was pushed into a bucket on the side, holding his breath, choking water, and splashing a little splash on the electromagnet on his chest, causing a small short circuit. A talented scientist who became famous as a teenager and billionaire Tony Stark, where did he receive such treatment? Repeatedly pressed his head into the water, as if he was dead. A voice from Pepper Potts came out in his head, "Tony." Single quote. Ethan was very unbearable on the sidelines, but he was helpless, unable to protect himself. When was exhausted, but still had to hold the car battery to save his life, Stark felt unprecedented insult and shame. "I have to carry this bulky battery to sustain my life." Single quote. Then, the sack was pulled out of the cave, and he looked at the heavy weapons, missiles, rockets, bombs, etc. everywhere outside. All the weapons were printed with the logo of, "Made by Stark." Even the guns in their hands are all made by Stark. The short and chubby Afghan bearded deputy chief seemed to be a little proud and said to Tony, "What do you think? Translated by Ethan. You have many weapons I made. We have all the materials used to make Jericho missiles, you make a list. Continued, I will start manufacturing right away, and when you are finished, I will let you go. After speaking, he extended a hand to indicate. Tony just wants to live now. Hearing the last paragraph of Ethan's translation, he put his hands up and held them together. Smiled and looked at the beard, but said in English, he can't. Ethan also looked at the deputy leader with a smile, and replied, yes, he won't. Looking at the smiles of the two, the beard also laughed. In the cave, only Tony and Ethan are left, and there is a pile of wood burning bonfires for lighting and heating. Stark stared blankly at the burning flames, remembering the good times before, wrapped in a layer of old and dirty blanket, sitting there shivering. Ethan looked at Tony, but said, I know your people must be looking for you, Stark. But they will never find this deep mountain. Squatted down and looked at Tony. You just saw it, those are your heritage, Stark. Stark did not respond, sitting motionless. Your life is in the hands of these murderers, don't you want to give up? The voice gradually increased. Is this the last resistance of the great Tony Stark? Ethan finally stared at Tony and said loudly, or tell me what you want to do. Stark's mind is flashing back countless pictures, Pepper's smiling face, his old car, Obi's voice. The countless models I have slept with, the last cup of coffee that Pepper handed him, the small model he gave Pepper, the electromagnet on his chest, the giant reactor in the company, and the last one I saw at the entrance of the cave sun. Recalling the last smiling face that he gave the model to Pepper, his eyes gradually shifted from her face to her hand, the little model. I moved unconsciously in his hand, recalling the shape of the model, as if the three-dimensional drawing of the model appeared in my mind, gradually broken down into parts, and seemed to collide with the idea buried deep in my mind. There was a strange light in Stark's eyes, and a thought that he had forgotten all along came out of his mind again. Okay, let's get to work. Stark stood up again. Ethan saw Stark regaining his fighting spirit, as if there was a trace of relief in his eyes, he also slowly smiled. One day later, in the cave, all the necessary equipment was sent in. Under the bright lights, the simple cave looked a bit like it at last. Stark finally disassembled the warhead of a missile and took out an internal detonator. Ethan came up, if I help you during the preparation process, it will be more efficient. Stark didn't hear him, he took out a thin piece of metal with tweezers from the device, and threw the rest behind him. What is this? This is metal palladium, 0.15 grams, at least 1.6 grams, so you go to tear down the other 11. Stark looked at Ethan and said. Ethan did not understand, but he followed Tony's instructions, and the smile appeared on his face again. Finally, it is necessary to use a crucible to melt the metal palladium, pour it into a mold, and condense it to form. This is a critical step because Stark is dragged down by the battery on his chest and can only be done by Ethan. Ethan used the clamp to clamp the crucible and walked slowly towards the mold, but Stark held the battery aside and emphasized, be careful, we only have one chance. Don't worry, my hand is very stable, otherwise you think how you survived. Ethan smiled relaxedly, and poured the liquid palladium into the mold steadily and slowly. How do you call it? Stark glanced at Ethan and finally asked the question. Call me Ethan. Ethan continued to pour the palladium. Ethan, nice to meet you. Stark glanced at Ethan, and finally expressed his approval. I'm glad to meet you too. Ethan smiled happily. Soon, a small circle of metal palladium appeared in Stark's hand. 3 days later, a small round table-shaped mechanical device appeared on the table. The power was turned on and it was completely activated, emitting a bright blue and white light. Caused the voltage of the surrounding circuit to become unstable, and the lights flickered. Stark looked at this small model, only it was in his eyes, and his lips trembled slightly. Ethan came to the side. Does this look like a Jericho missile? This is a miniature arc oscillation reactor. I have a big one in my hometown, which powers my factory. Stark touched it lightly. This should prevent shrapnel from entering my heart. How about its power generation capacity? If I haven't figured it out, it's generally not wrong, 3 billion joules per second. Enough for you to live 50 times. Ethan sighed. Yes, or 15 minutes for a big guy. Stark said calmly, thinking about the plan in his heart. How did you think that the compression is so small? Ethan asked, involuntarily looking at the reactor. But suddenly he pulled Stark's thoughts back a few days ago, took the reactor in front of him, and rubbed it inch by inch. Ethan, the day before I came to Afghanistan, a child gave it to I am a model. What model? That's it. Stark raised the reactor in front of him. It's very similar to this, but it's more refined. The funny thing is, I didn't think about it at that time. So strange. Ethan didn't expect it to be like this either. If I can go back, I will find that kid, sure. Stark lay back on the bed, and under Ethan's delicate operation, the small reactor was mounted on Stark's chest. The moment the shiny reactor was installed, it seemed to emit a strange light. Ethan's eyes flashed, and when he looked at Stark, it seemed that Tony was suddenly different. Tony stood up and looked at the car battery that he had been with him for 5 days. Now he finally got rid of its shackles, and it seemed that it was not just the shackles of the battery. Touched the cold reactor on his chest, but it seemed to make his blood boil. This new heart not only gave Tony strength, but also a mission. Mark 1 officially started. In the dark and damp cave, the enthusiasm for building steel parts began. Ethan, who is also a scientist, is enough to save Tony a lot of effort, and the mechanical parts are slowly formed like this. In their spare time, the two of them will use some childish games to relax their tight mood. This time, it was Tony's topic. You haven't told me where your hometown is. Tony glanced at Ethan and asked. Ethan's hand movement paused, he licked his lips lightly, and said, a small town called Gemira is a very good place. Do you have a family? Yes, I will meet them when I leave here. Ethan said without hesitation. Then asked back, where are you? Stark. Stark looked at Ethan for 2 seconds, twitched the corner of his mouth, lowered his head, and whispered back, I have no family. No. So, you have everything, but you have nothing, Ethan said flatly to Tony. Stark smiled slightly, but didn't know what he was thinking. 2 months later, most of the Mark I components have been completed, but during the test, some doubts were finally seen. The leader rushed in with a dozen younger brothers, and the two of them instantly became nervous. Just like the first time, Tony raised his hand above his head. But this time, instead of threatening Tony, he communicated with Ethan in a language that Tony couldn't understand. Why don't you listen to me? We are working, very serious. Ethan explained. The bald boss slowly walked to Ethan's. I'll save you a little life, how do you repay me? Ethan was forced to step back gently 2 steps, trying his best to explain. The missile is very complicated, he has worked very hard. The 2 younger brothers rushed forward, buckled Ethan back, and made him kneel down. The boss used tongs to tinker in the wrought iron stove on the side. Are you an idiot? Don't you say it. The voice was full of threats. Ethan knelt on the ground and said tremblingly, we work very hard. He picked up a small hot red iron ball out, smiled cruelly, open your mouth. Stark also felt wrong, and quickly asked Ethan, what does he want to do? The boss twisted Ethan's head and pressed it on the anvil, do you think I am a fool? What are you doing, tell me honestly. Stark squeezed his fists when he saw this, as if he had guessed what happened. He's building Jericho missiles. The moment Ethan's head hit the anvil, he seemed to give up struggling and said loudly. Frankly explain. The red and hot little iron ball has been handed to Ethan's mouth. He is building Jericho missiles. Frankly explain. The boss seemed to shove an iron ball into Ethan's throat in the next moment. He is building Jericho missiles. Stark couldn't help but stepped forward. What do you want? Do you want to give a delivery date? The boys around immediately pointed their guns at the bald boss and walked to Stark, looking very cautious. The boss also looked back at Stark, wanting to see what he was going to say, and deciding whether Ethan's mouth could still be left. I need him, he is a good helper. This is the first time Stark has said this, and the proud Tony Stark has said that he needs someone for the first time. Tomorrow, you must install the missiles for me. The iron in the hands of the boss fell down, looked at the 2 men, said threateningly, turned and left. Tony Stark looked at the leaving bald head, his eyes were full of anger, and his fists burst into blue veins. 2 hours later, the sound of chang, 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 resounded throughout the cave. Tony, wearing only a vest, beat a metal part in his hand with a hammer. Immersed in the coolant, and a burst of white water vapor appeared. The last part of Mark 1, the mask, is complete. Without too much hesitation immediately, Ethan began to assemble the Mark 1 quickly, and Stark carried out the final inspection and the program correction. The time is tight and the task is heavy, so you can't delay a moment. Ethan put on all the equipment for Tony, and asked, "Have you written down the way out?" This is Ethan staying here for so long, every time he is taken out to get the most useful information. Go straight 41 steps, 16 steps to the door, take the fork on the right, 33 steps, then turn right. Yes, very good, no problem. Ethan was already very tired and gasped. On the other side, Stark and the others were also found to be abnormal. Many people hurriedly came to check the situation. A Hungarian ran to the iron gate and shouted. But Ethan did not speak Hungarian, which aroused their suspicion. He opened the door directly, but was blown away by a bomb that Tony had already placed 7 or 8 meters away. Whether it is the explosion sound or the damage of the surveillance camera, it means that if it fails this time, both of them are dead. This is the last chance. Ethan activated the power supply program of Mark 1 under Tony's guidance, but as the noise outside got closer, he became more and more nervous. All the hexagonal bolts are tightened. Ethan glanced back at the program progress bar just halfway through, and murmured, "We need more time." Looked at Stark, who was fixed in the mecha. "Hey, let me buy you some time. Come according to plan, come according to plan. Ethan." Stark roared. Listening to the sound of Ethan's running away, Tony's eyes were filled with bloodshot eyes, and it seemed to be mixed with tears. As the program started, the voltage was loaded, all the lights went out, and the red eyes fell into darkness. After a while, someone broke through Ethan and rushed into Stark's cave. Using the metal armor made of steel, ordinary bullets can't break through the defense at all. The huge kinetic energy of the mechanical movement is enough to knock a person 10 meters away, and the 4 people who broke in are solved in 3 or 2. Relying on the route Ethan told, hurriedly walked towards the exit, hoping to find Ethan as soon as possible. Tony still held a glimmer of hope. With brute force, it was enough to hammer any person in front of him, and he could go forward with a volley of several rifles. In the small cave, did not encounter any opponents. Finally, at the entrance of the cave, I found the dying Ethan. "Ethan!" Tony just called out. Lying on the ground, Ethan saw the bald boss and shouted desperately, "Be careful." A grenade from the bald boss shot over, and Tony tilted his body and wiped it from the side of his head. Manually fired a micro-missile on his arm, but it did not hit the bald head, and the rock on the side exploded, blasting the bald boss fainted. Tony Stark came to Ethan's side, opened his face mask, sweating, staring at Ethan expectantly. "Hurry up, we have to go, just take it from me, go." We said yes, as planned. In the end, his voice trembled slightly. "I've always planned this way, Stark." Ethan lay on the ground pale, and said weakly, as if the care that had just been used up all his strength. "No, you still have to see your family. Get up," Tony said with staring eyes. "My family are all dead, I'm going to see them now, Stark, it's okay." Ethan looked at Tony. "This is the ending I want, what I want." Tony's nose began to tremble, and his eyes were slightly red, but looking at Ethan, who was crying, he tried to lift the corners of his mouth and smiled to face Ethan, but he moved twice and turned into crying again. "Thank you for saving me." Looking at Ethan with moist eyes, there was dismay and pain in his eyes. "Then cherish life, don't let it go." After speaking, Ethan took 2 breaths and lost his breath. Stark watched for a second, and tried his best to look away, only anger was left inside. Leo used these ordinary metals to accumulate the reinforcement of steel bars to 34% in these 3 months. With the increase in the degree of strengthening, the change in body weight can be felt very obviously. A small man who is obviously only 1.2 meters tall has gained 40 kilograms. And also very sensitive to discover that my gastrointestinal digestion speed is a bit faster. My stomach is like upgrading from a small boiler to a smelting furnace, any food is quickly converted into energy and disappeared. Therefore, Leo eats a box of snacks almost every day to maintain his body's consumption. Glanced at today's date, and muttered, "Time should be almost 2." Tony walked out of the cave wearing his armor. A large group of people had already gathered outside. A dozen rifles were aimed at the entrance of the cave, ready to welcome his arrival. The huge steel figure walked out. Before he moved, he was baptized by hundreds of bullets. The impact of hundreds of bullets made Tony unable to move for a while. After a volley, everyone stopped, but unscathed Tony raised his hands and turned on the flamethrower. It's me. Two huge pillars of fire spurted out, and the attached fuel ignited everything, except for those howling frantically, and there were countless Stark industrial missiles placed around the opening. As the temperature rose and the flames burned, the surrounding hundreds of flats quickly turned into a sea of flames, and all the people inside turned into coke. Only the enemies in the distance had room for resistance. 200 meters away, a heavy machine gun was set up and fired frantically at Tony. The huge impact of the bullet made his actions more difficult. At the same time, the exposed conveyor belt of the leg was also damaged by the gunshot, and the right leg could not move. The temperature around is getting higher and higher. Some ammunition and equipment have exploded, causing more explosive reactions. Even the small missiles not far away have become more and more unstable. Tony saw that the time was almost there, and turned on the last escape equipment, an ejector and engine removed from a small rocket for the final ejection flight. Just as Tony flew out of the valley, there was a huge explosion in the valley, and all the ammunition was detonated. The huge impact pushed Tony again, pushing the Mark I farther. The fuel-exhausted Mark I lost power in the air, fell into a free fall and plunged into the desert. Half of Tony's body was plunged into the sand. Mark I also completed its mission and sacrificed honorably. Tony took off the mask from his head with difficulty, with blood in the corners of his mouth and scratches on his neck. He looked weakly at the sun in the sky that had not been seen for 2 months. Not bad. Struggled to get up, judged the direction, and left quickly. 4 hours later, Tony didn't know how long he had been walking or how long he had ran. The high temperature of nearly 40 degrees has left him in a state of water shortage. If no one finds him before the night, he may not be able to live until the next day. Because of the way he landed on the ground, his right arm was also seriously injured and blood was flowing. Exhausted Tony has been thinking about what Ethan told him at the end, which became his motivation to continue running. I don't know how many kilometers he ran. Tony's mind has always been refreshed with his understanding of war and peace. Across sand dunes one after another, the sun has gradually set. Crossed a sand dune again, until 2 helicopters flew over his head. Tony slowed to react. Hey! Waved his left hand and shouted loudly. Is a military helicopter, it is to find his own plane. Tony, who had been exhausted a long time ago, weakened his legs and knelt on the yellow sand, holding his direct left hand high, with asterisk 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 on top. That is when I took a photo with the soldier who died because of protecting him on the jeep. At that time, I said, peace, I love peace, if it is peace, I won't work. At this moment, it is a wish that springs from the bottom of my heart, I love peace. Colonel Rod, who has been flying non-stop over the desert for the past 3 months, rushed forward and hugged Tony. Next time I will ride in the same car, okay. Tony fell into Rod's arms and smiled happily. Pepper also got the news, and he covered his mouth, choked with excitement tears, and leaned on the desk weakly and started crying. Who knows, she has been working under the pressure these days, and finally, Tony is coming back. On May 4, 2008, a military transport plane flew over from a distance inside a U.S. military base. And Pepper and Harpy waited here early. The hatch slowly opened, and Pepper was already staring at the figure sitting in the wheelchair above him, his eyes swollen and rosy again. Stark, who was injured in his right hand, slowly walked down with Rod's support. Pepper also smiled with a few tears. From the inside out, he had never missed someone so much. Tony still has a few scars on his face, but Pepper is the only one in his eyes. Your eyes are red. Are you sad for your missing boss? Happy? I'll look for a job again for the province. Yeah, the holiday is over. Tony did not forget his original intention. Harpy opened the door, and Tony Stark got in his car again. Where to go, sir? Take us to the hospital. Happy. Not going, Tony said. No, Tony, you have to go to the hospital for a checkup. I will never go to the hospital, I will do nothing. Tony stared at Pepper. I have been detained for 3 months, I only want to do 3 things now, one is to eat a cheeseburger, the other is. Pepper turned his gaze. You are always so lustful. It's not what you think. I want to hold a press conference. The press conference. Why do you want to hold a press conference? Pepper didn't understand, but worried about Tony's body. There are 3 more. Pepper, help me find the kid in Asia. Harpy has seen him. Okay, Harpy, drive, go eat cheeseburger first. The car started slowly, and Pepper still looked confused. Child. Hogan, what child? Where is the child? Today is another comfortable weekend. Jenny is working overtime. Uncle George has some work to do. Even Peter was taken to the amusement park by Aunt May and would not come to find herself. Leo, how did you know Tony Stark was back? I just found out that they seem to be preparing a press conference in a certain venue. Single quote. Leo's cell phone rang, and a message like this appeared in it. Well, send me the location, I promise to make a model for you first. Looking at the message sent to him by his friends in the group, Leo put on his little school bag and went out. Stopped a taxi, go to this place, hurry up, very urgent. This place is an industrial park, a bit remote. How anxious. The driver's brother glanced at the address on the phone. Within 20 minutes, I will pay twice the fare. Oh. With a kick of the accelerator, the car started driving quickly. In the speeding car, Leo saw a lot of cars driving in the same direction around him, and even overtook them, looking like they were all at the same destination. What are these cars? The driver also glanced. These are from those TV stations, as well as the cars of newspapers such as the New York Times and the New York Daily News. How do you know that there are no signs on the outside of these cars? They are on rampage every day, even crazier than our taxis, a bunch of lunatics. The driver seemed to have a big complaint. As soon as he stepped on the accelerator, he chased him and bit him tightly behind the car. 18 minutes later, the taxi stopped steadily outside the gate of the Stark factory, and the driver's brother looked expectantly. Leo also kept his promise and gave double the car money. Got out of the car and walked towards the gate. Many reporters also hurried over. Leo's appearance was inconspicuous at all, but he had to admire the methods of group friends. The news was really timely, not worse than those reporters. But Leo's young age still caused him inconvenience. Was stopped by the guard at the door. Hey, kid, where's your family? I can't let you in here. Miss Pepper Potts asked me to come. Leo said boldly. The guard also scratched his head when he heard it. My kid, I don't remember Miss Potts has Asian friends. Sorry, unless you can call her. Leo narrowed his mouth, looked at the surrounding walls, and left. Picked up a wall that happened to be empty, and lifted his hands gently, and the metal piece under the shoes lifted Leo up and flew in lightly. Quickly walked to the official interview venue inside. From the gate to the venue, there was still a long distance. During the period, I saw all kinds of luxury cars rushing in, all to talk to Tony Stark. Meet. Leo also speeded up his pace. After a while, he came to the door of a building and was full of people. Most of them were employees in neat suits, all waiting outside the court for the arrival of the master. There is also a white beard and bald head wearing a light blue striped suit standing at the door, wearing a pair of sunglasses, talking with the surrounding crowd. Leo narrowed his eyes. Obadi. That is Stark's closest uncle, Obadi, the mastermind of Tony's kidnapping, the driver of Iron Overlord, and the last boss of Steel One Foot. Leo glanced at the metal watch he was wearing on his wrist, and he could kill him with just a thought. Of course, Leo certainly wouldn't do this now, and he didn't pay much attention to Obadi, because he believed that Obadi was not a threat to him. Passed through the gate and directly entered the hall, where all 40 or 50 journalists from different media gathered here. In front of the stage, there are many, long guns and short cannons, aimed at the podium, which will record every detail of this conference. Leo stood silently behind all the reporters, waiting for Tony's arrival, but at this moment he saw a familiar figure. A figure who always smiles kindly, wears a black suit, and has a prominent hairline. The 7th level agent of the National Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, Agent Phil Coulson. Leo was still considering whether to make contact, but soon there was warm applause and cheers from outside, and it seemed that the master had arrived. After a while, Tony was surrounded by a group of people and walked in with a cheeseburger in his hand. Opadri next to him kindly embraced Tony, and Pepper and Harpy followed behind. Obadiah took Tony onto the stage without stopping, preparing for the next speech. And Collison saw Pepper. His eyes lit up, and he walked over. Leo also came to Pepper's side smoothly and stopped in front of Collison. Miss Potts. Collison didn't expect Leo's intervention. He stood behind Leo and looked up at the kid in front of him. Pepper turned around. The first thing he saw was Collison, and then he lowered his head and saw Leo. Oh, kid, hi, kid, what can I do? Leo didn't know what to say for a while, raised the small metal model in his hand and handed it to Pepper's hand. Oh, you are that kid. Pepper looked at Leo in surprise. She was clever and immediately reacted. After all, the model in her hand was so similar to the one Tony gave him. Pepper is worried about where to find it, an Asian boy I met in Las Vegas 3 months ago. Did not expect that he would come to him on the initiative. Child, what is your name? I need your help for something, can I? Pepper squatted down, looking at Leo with excitement. My name is Leo, Miss Potts, I think the gentleman behind me has something to look for you, I can wait a while. Collison couldn't even touch his head. There seems to be no information about this child in the information. Who is he? But he also stepped forward. Miss Potts, this is Agent Phil Collison. I work for the National Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Quote. Pepper looked at Coulson and said, this name is really sloppy. Collison handed over a business card. I know, we are also working on it. Pepper didn't have any expressions, instead he kept looking at Leo beside him. The Department of Defense, the FBI, and the CIA have all approached us. We are an independent department with more centralized functions. We would like to ask Mr. Stark to describe the escape process in detail. Coulson continued smiling. Pepper sighed helplessly, glanced at Tony on the stage, and said as usual, can I arrange it? Collison was also very witty. He saw that Pepper had no desire to continue talking, thanked him, and left with a smile. Leo, after Tony gets down, shall we talk together again? Pepper said kindly to Leo. Of course, I also miss the current Mr. Stark. Leo looked at Tony in front of him and laughed. Hey, everyone sit down, okay. Tony, who was sitting on the steps and leaning on the podium, said, and proceeded to take out a cheeseburger from his pocket. So everyone can see me, so can I, everyone is free. I took a big bite of the cheeseburger. Obadiah also sat down beside Stark. Pepper and Leo also squatted down. Rod also came to Pepper's side, squatting and asking, what does he want to do? Don't look at me, I don't know what he is going to do. Pepper looked at Tony ahead with a smile. Rod looked at Leo on the side strangely. Leo grinned, Rod was inexplicably smiling, who is this kid? Single quote. Stark took a bite of the burger, and looked at Obadiah who was sitting beside him with a smile on his face. It's nice to see you. The voice is very deep, from the inner voice. Obadiah smiled and lowered his head, and patted Tony on the shoulder, I feel so too. I haven't been able to see my father for the last time, and I have never been able to say goodbye to my father. The first sentence was to Obadiah, and the second sentence was for all the reporter friends. Tony looked very serious, suddenly fell into thinking, and Hamburg was also put aside. I have a question to ask him, I want to ask him what he thinks about producing arms. Paused, and continued to say deeply, have he ever contradicted and wavered? Or he is a tough guy like the media reports. The flashing camera lights shone on Tony's thoughtful face. All his closest people, Pepper, Rhodes, and Opadri, discovered that he has changed. He is no longer the proud and arrogant Stark who only knows how to make weapons and have ***** with models. Up. Tony looked at all the reporters in front of him. I saw young fellow Americans being killed, dying under the weapons I originally wanted to make to protect them. He thought of the few American soldiers on the Happy Jeep. I also discovered that this system is comfortable with irresponsibility, and I have become one of them. Obadiah's face changed, as if he was thinking about something. Sir, Mr. Stark. A reporter raised his hand. Please say. What happened to you there? All the reporters looked at Stark expectantly, expecting him to answer this question. Awakened Tony and decided the decision in his heart. He stood up and said, I am completely awake. What I have to do to this world is to make more contributions, not just build weapons that will explode. So, I decided to close the weapon manufacturing department of Stark Industries. Until I decide the new direction of the company. Obadiah didn't expect Tony to say this suddenly. He hurriedly got up to stop Stark from continuing to speak, and gently pushed Tony aside. Stark did not stop, and continued, I will find one that I think fits. Obadiah snatched the microphone, trying to relieve all the shocked reporters below. And in a direction consistent with the highest interests of the country. Tony finished speaking to the reporter without a microphone. Just walked back, ignoring the questions of the crazy reporters around him. Obadiah said with a quick smile, trying to bring the topic back as best as he could, the news we should pay attention to is that Tony is back and healthier, isn't it? Looking at the noisy reporters below, Obadiah's eyes appeared anger and regret. We will discuss this issue further, and will notify everyone of our final discussion as soon as possible. Tony returned to the car under the protection of Harpy, and Pepper and Leo followed and got into the car. Stark has been thinking about his next mission. First of all, I have to change to a reactor. The one on my chest is too rough, and then I still need. Suddenly looked at Leo, who was sitting next to him, blinking his big shiny eyes, and Tony's head instantly broke. What's the situation? Tony called, looking at Leo. Mr. Stark, it's nice to see you again. Sister Pepper said that you seem to be looking for me, so I came here by myself. Isn't it exciting? Leo looked at Tony in shock enthusiastically. Pepper also looked back at Leo curiously, wanting to see how this kid attracted Tony's attention. Could it be because of the metal model? Tony's heart had a question hidden in his heart, but he fell silent, and put his hands on his chest. The coldness stimulated his brain. Happy, take me to the power generation center. Okay, sir. Happy turned the front of the car and drove to the power center next to the Stark factory. Leo looked at Tony, feeling the 5 small metal fragments in his body that were adsorbed on the chest reactor, and the one that kept flashing on the arc reactor in his mind, firmly attracting his eyes. Pepper saw Leo staring at Tony's chest, and Tony put his left hand on his chest without bandaging. How can you be interested in Tony's chest under what circumstances? Single quote. In less than 10 minutes, I passed through a large factory area and arrived at the power generation center. I want to be alone. Tony glanced at Leo again. Leo, come with me, I have some questions I want to ask you. Harpy wisely took Pepper and left, leaving the two of them standing at the gate. Tony walked in first, Leo followed without saying a word. Passing through the gate, the first thing I saw was that huge arc reactor, with huge arcs flashing in circles, full of huge energy. Stark looked deeply at the reactor in front of him, feeling the flashing arc in it, as if he had seen his own heart without speaking. Leo is also the first time to see this intoxicating device, full of technological beauty, enough to provide huge energy. Leo. Right. Yes, my name is Leo, Mr. Stark. What do you know? What does that model mean? I think you should tell me something. Tony turned his head and looked at Leo. Yes, sir, you should change to a new set of arc reactor, otherwise, the reactor power on your chest is not very sufficient. Leo's eyes seemed to penetrate Tony's clothes. You know. Tony shook his head and smiled. Can you tell me why? What else do you know? Everything about me, my experience. Yes, sir, I can see a lot, both in the past and in the future. Oh, then please tell me what you see now. Stark looked at Leo, not only curious, but also threatening. Stark, do you remember what Mr. Ethan said? Cherish his life, don't waste it. Leo said meaningfully. When Tony heard Ethan's name, his pupils opened slightly. Impossible, how could he know Ethan? There was no one around at that time. Single quote. Did you install a bug on my body? Or, you are the one who kidnapped me? Tony looked at Leo deeply, and his left hand was tightly grasped on the lever. No, Mr. Stark. Leo stared at Tony's eyes tightly, with a golden glow in his eyes. I know a lot, just because of my ability. Leo blinked his eyes, and the golden light faded, and the person who kidnapped you, I think you can see him soon. Mr. Stark, I'm waiting for you outside the door. Leo looked at Tony, who was still confused, walked out the door, and just ran into Obadiah, who came in. Smiled, and took the initiative to let go. Although Obadiah doubted Leo's identity, he did not pay too much attention to it. Now he is full of anger at Tony's decision. With a Cuban cigar in his mouth, he came in to find Tony. Saw Tony standing in front of the reactor, biting his cigar, angrily, some illegible words, "Look at what you did." Tony also turned his head, a little embarrassed to face his uncle. "Everyone has drawn a bullseye on my head." "Your head. My head." Obadiah put one hand into his trouser pocket and walked over. "How much do you think the stock price will fall tomorrow?" "Be optimistic, 40%. Stark replied very self-consciously. "That's the least." Obadiah almost bit off the cigar head. Holding the pole in one hand, persuaded, "Tony, we make arms." "Obi, I don't want to make a fortune from the dead." Tony looked at his most beloved uncle, with expectations in his eyes, hoping that Obadiah would identify with him. Obadiah said word by word, "But this is our old line. We are arms dealers. The company belongs to me, I have the final say." Tony interjected, and Obadiah ignored him and continued. "Everything we do is to maintain the order of the world." Staring straight at Tony's eyes, as if to put it on his face. "What I saw there is not like this." Tony looked at Obadiah with great expectation. "We haven't done enough, we can improve, ours do something else." Obadiah didn't care about Tony's eyes and frowned. "For example, shall we make baby bottles?" Tony also realized that Obi could not communicate now, and changed his attitude, so he had to say positively, "I think the arc reactor technology can be considered." Obadiah laughed. "Oh, the arc reactor, that's just a gesture." He waved to the huge reactor on the side. "Tony, stop making trouble, the purpose of this thing is to shut up the good guys. It has value." Stark said silently. "Yes, you can also play as a science project. This thing can't even be collected, we all know it." He walked behind Tony again. "Arc reactor technology, there is no way out, right? That's what you think. Am I wrong? This thing hasn't broken through for many years." "Ha, it's been 30 years. Obadiah said disdainfully. "That's what they said." Tony turned around and looked at his unhappy uncle. "Can your poker face still be stinking?" "Don't worry, show me the breakthrough." Obadiah pointed to Tony's face with a cigar. "Okay. It was Rod who said it." Tony's eyes were sad and he unbuttoned his chest. Obadiah looked around and made sure that no one was aside. Before staring at Stark's chest, he saw the rough small arc reactor firmly embedded in Tony's chest. As if afraid of being discovered by others, he hurriedly fastened Tony's chest button. "Okay. Are you satisfied?" Obadiah finally showed a smile on his face, and the joy in his eyes was unstoppable, as if he had discovered a huge treasure, secretly ecstatic. Looking at Tony Stark in front of him, he sighed with satisfaction and said with a smile, "Listen to me, Tony, we are a team, understand? As long as we work together, there is nothing we can't do. Just like your dad and me back then." Tony looked at Obi in front of him, and said apologetically, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you in advance, okay? Tony, you can't do it like this in the future, do you understand? This is my father's policy." Obadiah pursed his mouth and looked at Tony in front of him. After learning about the arc reactor, his mood has completely changed. "Let me settle this matter. We have to make a complete change, and we will become the focus of everyone." Walked out with Tony in his arms, and put Tony in Harpy's car, but did not find another figure in the car. "Leo, what did you just mean? I will see him soon. The leader of that organization has been blown to death by me." Tony looked at Leo, who was sitting calmly on the side. "You didn't see his body again, how are you sure of his death? If you remember correctly, you only bombed the wall beside him at the time." Leo smiled and looked at Tony. The golden light in his eyes made Tony unforgettable for a long time. Tony rubbed his head and really couldn't understand why this kid really knew the scene at the time, as if he was there. By the way, Leo, I still remembered at the time, did you seem to apologize to me?" "Why? I didn't know you at that time." Leo glanced at Tony and turned his head back. "Mr. Stark, my ability allows me to foresee death, but I can't tell you, so I have to apologize to you." "What? You know Ethan is going to die." Stark turned to face Leo. His left hand was still intact and he grabbed Leo's neck, a little angry, shocked, and regretful in his eyes. "Yes. Leo didn't deceive Tony on this point. You made me lose one of my best partners, my savior." Tony gritted his teeth. Seeing that something was wrong, Happy stopped the car to the side of the road, reached out and took out a swing stick, staring at Leo, even if he was just a child. But, Tony, do you think I told you? Would you believe it? If you believe it, can you go to Ethan? Saved him, but will he really come back with you? Leo looked at Tony, who pulled him up, was not angry, even smiled. Tony thought about what Ethan said. This is my plan, I'm going to see my family. This is the ending I want. Tony, cherish life, don't leave it alone. With a soft hand, Leo sat back in his seat. Sitting on the seat with eyes blank, Ethan's words still echoed in his mind, this savior who had lived and ate with him for 3 months. Leo's eyes brightened, his gaze went through his clothes and flesh and blood, and he directly saw the device on his chest. Although it was a bit crude, it still firmly maintained Tony's life. But there is a small piece of copper wire exposed outside. It is fine if it is not opened, but after opening, it is easy to touch the socket and cause a short circuit. His eyes moved to Tony's right hand, which had been tied up, a small sprain, no serious problem. Mr. Stark, my family lives in Manhattan, Forest Hill Road, number 42. If you have any questions, you can come to me anytime. If you need help, you can also come to me. Mr. Stark, I want to tell you, the future is very exciting, I believe you. Leo patted Tony on the shoulder like a small adult and walked out of the car. Glanced at the alert Happy, smiled slightly, the swinging stick in his hand broke at the sound, and all the pieces were scattered on the ground. And Leo pointed his toes, like a sports car, flew out in a whistling low altitude, and disappeared in a while. Both of them saw this scene, and Happy rubbed his eyes, unable to believe it. Tony thought about everything just now, including the way he left, how did he do it? Single quote. A growing seed sprouted in Tony's heart. After Leo left, he found a place where no one was there and stopped. Before he was completely sure, he didn't want to expose himself. Took a taxi and returned home. Aunt Jenny also returned from get off work. Uncle George was still sitting on the sofa, turning on the TV and reading the newspaper. The evening news reported that Tony Stark's return was supposed to be a day worth celebrating in the United States, but a major news came out: Stark Industries will close the weapons development and production department. This news surprised everyone. Next, let's take a look at the detailed report of the reporter on site. Jenny, have you seen it? Tony Stark is going to close the weapon manufacturing department of Stark Industries, what do you think? George put down the newspaper in his hand. Stark is crazy. A good weapons manufacturing company doesn't make weapons anymore. Fortunately, we didn't buy his stock, or we would lose money. Leo said, no, Aunt Jenny, Uncle George, now is a good time to buy, and the next time Stark Industries has a new economic pillar, the price will definitely rise very sharply. George looked at Leo with a smile. Leo, you don't understand, unless Stark restarts the weapon manufacturing department, otherwise, it is estimated that the stock is going to limit down, only fools will buy it. Leo looked at the two of them and smiled helplessly. He still had $50,000 on hand. Although not much, it was enough. As far as money is concerned, Leo doesn't have much desire, he can maintain the cost. According to his own ability, there are many ways to get money, and it is easy and unnecessary, right? Most of the high-end metals are unsellable, or sold at sky-high prices in the black market, and they have caught up with Stark's line. This problem should be solved, and Leo is also relieved. Control point: 77 feet. Strength 15, Defense 19, Speed 9, Spirit 19 inches. Skill: D-level metal control, D-level physical enhancement. Strengthening: GoldenEye 100%, Copper Skin 100%, Steel Bar 35%, Iron Bone 0%. Derivative technique: destroying golden eyes. Don't be fooled by any abilities, see through all illusions, enhance visual observation, metallize objects. Don't move the golden body, enhance great defense power, stand on the ground with both feet. You will have infinite physical strength, the body will recover faster, and will not be moved by external force. With the reinforcement of the steel bars getting higher and higher, my strength gradually increased. A small fist, one punch, about 250 kilograms of power, enough to break an ordinary person's thigh bone. According to the current speed, it may take 2 to 3 years to complete the accumulation of the control value to more than 100 points. At the same time, the strengthening speed of the steel bars will inevitably be reduced. Even now Leo would spend a lot of time on cultivation, this speed still makes him feel chilling. Oh, I knew it was like asking Tony for some high-quality metal. Leo knocked his head. Aunt Jenny, please take a week off for me, I need to go to Los Angeles. Leo, what do you want to do? George put down the newspaper and walked to Leo's side, asking strangely. Go to Tony Stark, I need his help if I have something. Leo looked at the frowning Uncle George. No, Leo, you are already a big child, you are about to enter middle school, and the final exam is about 2 weeks away. You are not allowed to run around now. Aunt Jenny hurried out wearing an apron, there is still unwiped flour on his hands. Yes, George, listen to Jenny, shall we go out after the exam? After the summer vacation, we will accompany you to play for a few days, okay? Looked at the two people who looked at him expectantly, crying and laughing, okay, go out after the exam. 3 days later, Tony finally completed the manufacture of a new type of arc reactor in his basement. The top materials and technical methods were used, both in terms of power and safety, and even the style was more beautiful. Despite this, I still ran into some minor troubles. Pepper is watching TV. It is showing an online channel mocking Stark Industries. Pepper frowned, thinking about how to solve this problem. Stark Industries stock has fallen 47%, and the momentum is very bad. The display phone on the desk rang. Pepper, how big is your hand? What? Why do you ask? Come down, I want you to do me a favor. Pepper came to the basement and saw Tony lying on a chair, with his upper body exposed, with an inexplicable luminous body on his chest, which seemed to be inside Tony's body. Original hurried pace slowed down unbelievably. Let me see your hand. Pepper raised his hands, and Tony was relieved when he saw it. Oh. Great, it's really slender and small. Glanced at the brand new reactor in his hand, I need you to do me a little favor. Oh my god. Is this thing keeping you alive? Pepper stood beside Tony, staring at the one on his chest. Yes, but this is an old antique. In the foreseeable future, I will use this new one. Tony looked at Pepper in front of him. I want to change this, but it's stuck. What is stuck? It's nothing, it's just a small obstacle, there is an exposed wire underneath. Tony took the old reactor off his chest and pulled it lightly, and the connection of the bottom line was pulled out. Pepper's right hand tremblingly took it. Me, what am I going to do? Put it aside, this is useless. Oh, my god, Pepper said while looking at the device in his hand. I need you to reach in and take out the wire inside. Is it safe to do this? This is Pepper's biggest concern. Tony pursed his lips. It's safe in theory, just like a minor operation, as long as you don't let it touch the base, it won't strike me. I was shocked by an electric shock just now, which made Tony still feel very uncomfortable. What is minor surgery? Tony looked at the nervous woman with slightly shaking hands. It's like a little game, don't be nervous, just take out the thread carefully, okay? Okay. Pepper reached out his hand tentatively. But I just touched the cold metal shell, like a timid rabbit, quickly retracted his hand. No, I don't think I can do it. It's okay, you can, you are the most capable person to help me. Tony tilted his head and looked at Pepper. It's also the person I trust the most. You can do very well. Pepper saw such a Tony for the first time. Tony Stark, a weakling in need of help, made his heart beat wildly. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.